Hello, family and friends. Welcome to another Talks with Liem Lee. This is available to the billions of people around the world on YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, CastBox, Podchaser, Supercast, and so many more.
No radio?
Not radio yet. Oh,
Okay.
iHeartRadio.
iHeartRadio. We're on that.
I'm your host, Liem. I bring the perspective of a software engineer. I've been doing it for about 2 decades. And today my host is...
Co-host.
Co-host.
Host. My name is Emmett Morgan. I'm a Las Vegas realtor. I just hang out on the show a lot. It's a nice place. Today, we actually have 2 stunning and incredible professional women here who are just treasures of Las Vegas. They are doing good things in our community. Please welcome Maria Jose and Norma. Can you tell us a little bit about yourselves?
Yes. Well, thank you for having us. My name is Maria Jose Gatti. I am the Executive Director for Corporate Philanthropy and Community Engagement for MGM Resorts. And I've been with MGM for the last 14 years in different positions. And like I told the group, I love what I do.
Thanks for having me here. Super excited. I am Norma Intriago. I'm the Executive Director for Dress for Success Southern Nevada. We are a global nonprofit in 25 countries. I'm one of 100 affiliates, but we're the only 501c3 here in Southern Nevada doing the work that we do to empower women to become economically independent by providing them professional attire, network of support, and all the development tools that they need to succeed in life and in work.
Awesome. So we spend
Fantastic. No, I was just saying that's fantastic. Yeah.
So we spend 3 hours talking about how people could get involved. We talk about the diversity problems. We talk about how that affects women and why women are affected during COVID. Any other key issues that we talked about?
How old white men are oppressing everybody.
Yeah. So stay tuned. Let's just roll in. I just want to say thank you for
Oh, thank you for having us.
Yeah, we're happy to be here.
So what's on your guys' minds? Philanthropy, nonprofit, Dress for Success for women. What's
MGM. She's on the funder side.
So you have 2 people that work in the same space in 2 different worlds, right? Norma, who will do a great job in talking about what she does as the executive director for Dress for Success, is who we usually sometimes turn around into fund, right? I'm the funder. I'm the person that pitches programming to a corporation, MGM Resorts, for community engagement. So you have the 2 sides of a coin here. Both of us do similar things. We both do similar stuff, but different. Both of us have the same focus in mind, which is impact our communities in a positive way.
How does MGM come into play on that? Like, so you're a part of the company they have you as a part of a division to help nonprofits?
Yeah, so my department, my job, I'm the Executive Director of Community Engagement and Philanthropy for MGM Resorts International. I am one of 3 different areas within corporate social responsibility. There's diversity, equity, and inclusion, sustainability, and community engagement philanthropy. So under my purview, you have corporate giving, foundation giving, and volunteering. Anything that has to do with employee engagement and engaging in communities. And that's just across the enterprise. My main focus is on Southern Nevada.
Is MGM the biggest employer in Las Vegas?
Yeah, we are the largest employer in the state of Nevada.
State of Nevada, okay. And so MGM has a big ability to influence our state. And in this case, you're funding programs to help the state, right? To help the people.
To help people in Southern Nevada, mainly in Southern Nevada. So
Yeah.
Our focus is always to support the communities where we work and live in, right? We don't have anybody in Northern Nevada, so
Yeah.
resources are spent in the South. But the same thing is across the country. We're in Detroit and Mississippi, both North and South. New Jersey, New York, Ohio, Maryland. And so it's the same protocol, the same idea. It's we invest in the communities where we are actually working.
Okay, so you work at MGM, and then Norma is at Dress for Success. Is that correct?
I'm at Dress for Success, Southern Nevada. Dress
Yeah.
for Success is a global nonprofit where I'm one of 100 affiliates. Now we're our own separate
Wow.
501c3. We're across 25 countries. In the U.S., I think it's in over about 41 states. So, and the mission of Dress for Success, and this is all Dress for Success. Our global mandate is that we're an organization that truly focuses on empowering women. And, the best way that we can empower women is to make sure that that woman is economically independent. That is our goal. And the way we sustain that goal and the way we approach that goal is by one, right, that point of entry is to provide a woman professional attire. So if a woman is unemployed, underemployed, socioeconomically disadvantaged, right? Oftentimes, that woman may not have the wardrobe to pursue, right, a career or to be interviewed for a job that she needs, and sometimes it's a survival job, right? To put food on the table, to keep, her kids' bellies full. So the suiting program that we have is really the heart of the organization, but that's just our point of entry, right? We want a woman to be seen so that then she can be heard and she has a seat at the table. So it begins with the suiting program, and then we provide her with a network of support. So a lot of data shows that for people of color, for women, right, any group that has to deal with inequity, right, how we address that inequity is to give them that access, the access that wealth, that networks give you, right? When you go to an Ivy League school, sure, it's a great education, but what you're really paying is for an access to a network, right? We see the data, those that graduate from the top schools, how they start off at a very high salary, right? So it's access to those networks where they can get paid internships. So that's what we try to provide for our women, and we do that in partnership with corporations like the MGM, because we rely on they're sort of like our brain trust, right? That's our network, is to connect our women with professional women like Maria Jose, or HR executives in the MGM that can be career coaches, that can be mentors for our women, right? Because they need that modeling if they haven't seen a career pathway. But we also provide them with development tools. We have a big partnership that's new with Dress for Success on a global basis, and that's with Google. So we're harnessing the power of Google, right? Leveraging off their intellectual property so that we have the models and have to create a curriculum for the women, right? I can address women that need digital upskilling, and we can have those Google modules that are already built in videos, and all I have to do is get volunteers to provide that training for women. So it is, as I said, to make sure that women are economically independent, and we do that with the professional attire, the network of support, and the development tools.
So is there Maria, have you had a situation where you actually got a woman from the woman of Dress for Success? Sorry. So like, have you helped someone that ended up working at MGM? So it seems like it could be a win-win. MGM's helping your foundation.
And that's a great question, because those are the conversations that we're having now. So now, especially with the pandemic, right, the way women have been disproportionately impacted with the pandemic, what we're trying to create is stronger partnerships that I'm looking here locally, so that we can have, when there's, for example, an MGM job openings, virtual fairs, we usually post the jobs and share them with our women. We have a Facebook group just for our clients, but we are trying to create stronger partnerships. So you've actually started a conversation I want to have with Maria Jose and other corporate partners, so that when we're suiting a woman, right, the idea would be to match them right there and there with a career coach, but then also to have, let's say, a spokesperson from the MGM there, tell them what they're looking for as an employer. And I mean, wouldn't it be great if we can just get them signed up right on the spot to apply? So that's the long-term goal, especially now. There is a need on both sides, right? I need to get women back into the labor market, and Maria Jose needs to fill positions. The MGM needs to fill positions, and we have to meet somewhere there, because we know that a lot of also the safety nets have fallen. And so now more than ever, I think the relationship between the public and private sector is critical.
Yeah, and it's important to say that I may be funding programs like Norma's and others in the community, but when it comes down to employment, it goes into a completely different department, right? It goes into the human resources side of the recruitment of MGM. And I think there is an opportunity just in general to build better partnerships between the funder, whether it's MGM, SANS, WIN, any of them, right, and the nonprofits, and being able to translate what the money is doing to the impact it is having in people's lives. So in a program like Norma, they actually were awarded a grant this year through the foundation, and I should clarify the foundation is mainly employee dollars. Employees contribute into the MGM Resorts Foundation.
Oh, cool.
We open up for grants, and once a year we open an RFP, and that's how the dollars get funded. And so we will turn around and look at groups like Norma and say, okay, well, now it's time for you to track. So where did this money go, right? There's a return on investment, and it's more on a return on impact, right? The impact that she will have. We have the funds, but we don't have the programs, right? That's her job. That's her organization's job. It's no different than a food bank, right? We may be able to write a grant to 3 Square, but it's 3 Square's job to build the food bank and provide the food around and in the community.
When MGM is looking for foundations, so you're dealing with a lot of foundations other than Dress for Success. You're doing all
Organizations.
of MGM.
Yeah, nonprofits.
Right.
So there's 2 types of, in my world, in Norma's world, a nonprofit, or it's not necessarily sometimes a foundation.
Mm-hmm.
There are foundations, and the guidelines are similar, but they're different in the sense that a nonprofit is actually a business. It's a business, and the only difference between a mechanic, I'm going to say, and a nonprofit is the tax status. That's it.
Okay.
One is tax exempt, which is a nonprofit, where the mechanic that's opening up his shop or her shop, it's a for-profit. You must pay taxes on everything you buy, and you have to charge taxes, right? When you give the money to a nonprofit, it's tax exempt. She needs to show it at the end of the year, submit a 990 a 990 like everybody else does. So everyone submits tax returns. She needs to show what she raised and where the money was invested. Where you in a for-profit business may have partners that you have to share the revenue with. Her revenue shared back into the organization. So that's the big difference.
Can you start up a nonprofit car mechanic? Because I would really like that.
You could start up a car mechanic internship where you can actually help kids understand what it takes to fix a car. Especially nowadays that everything is engineered with electronics. So you can definitely do that. However, there are still projects and partnerships here in the community that already have that. So you may just be able to volunteer. That's usually what I tell people when they tell me that they want to start a nonprofit. I'm like, okay, it's a lot of work, and you have to set it up as a business.
And you don't make any money.
That's not necessarily true. Yeah. Okay, because there's this other perception that people that work in nonprofits
there's a mindset of poverty. I think that people misunderstand about nonprofits.
They have to be poor, just with a big heart to work in a nonprofit.
Okay.
Well, that's not true, because just like Norma, and once upon a time I worked for a nonprofit as well. Yeah. I still need to put food on the table. I need to pay my mortgage. I need to send my kid to school. I need to do all the things that a person in the for-profit world will have to do, right?
Yeah,
so
I
have
a paycheck.
Correct. Yeah. So I need to have a sustainable wage. Norma cannot work towards making women independent, financially independent, if she can't get paid herself, right? So
she can't even afford nice clothes.
Or beyond that, just the ability to be self-sufficient, right? To be a person that is above the poverty level, because all the work any organization does around food, education, and workforce, it's trying to build wealth for everyone, not just for a few. Yeah. And I think that's, wouldn't you say?
The key. Yeah, I think there's so many nonprofits. Really, at the end of the day, I think we all have the same end goal, right? We want to that's the difference. I think we quickly want to put ourselves out of business, right? We're tackling some of the world's most difficult problems, but there should be an end goal. You want to fulfill that mission. That's why it's the vision in a nonprofit is probably more critical than in a for-profit, right? And then there are a lot of cross-cutting sectors. So let's say I'm looking at one segment of the population. I'm looking specifically at the way, this inequity, particularly for women, right? But I'm tackling poverty. I'm tackling poverty. So like I said, there may be more of a laser focus, and then there are other cross-cutting issues, like Maria Jose says. There could be other nonprofits and organizations that are also looking specifically at one issue. But what we want, right, it's I do believe it's generational wealth building. We want to break cycles of poverty. We want to break generational poverty, and we do that in different ways. And our focus may be different, but I think for many, many charities, that is the end goal, because it's poverty has the way folks are affected by poverty, right? It's cross-cutting issues, right? It impacts your access to healthcare. It impacts your access to the labor market, to workforce, right? It impacts your access to food, which you talked about, why food banks are important. So all these charities have a place. Now, I like the fact that you asked the question of how do you start a nonprofit, and everybody wants to, but one of the things that we don't do, that we should take it serious as a business, because there are too many people I say the road to hell is paved with good intentions, with lots of good hearts. And anyone that wants to start a nonprofit, the first thing I say is why. And while you may have a lovely cause, have you done your analysis, your demographic? There's probably already another nonprofit tackling that issue. Are they being effective, impactful, right? In Nevada, we're specifically challenged with that. I think it speaks of the goodwill of the community. Too many nonprofits, small nonprofits with very little impact. We've lots of nonprofits with budgets under $250,000. So it's a very fragmented nonprofit market. And while, yes, there's also, you can go on the flip side and make a case or an argument for a nonprofit that's bureaucratic, that's bloated, that's not effective, right? That could certainly be the case. But I think for everyone, whether you want to start a nonprofit, whether you're a funder, or whether you are a donor, you really need to look at impact. You need to look at the problem that nonprofit is seeking to solve, right? And how effective they're being, and not judging them with that poverty mindset, right? By their overhead. That's not an effective way to judge a nonprofit. You're going to judge it by its programs and services. And one thing that I love that Maria Jose said, that return on community, right? What your ROI is, that return on investment for us in the public sector, in the public good, it's return on community. How are we impacting our communities?
Can you give us a great success story?
Yeah.
You don't have to give names.
No, I have a great success story. And recently she was featured, I don't know if you guys saw her in the RJ, she was public. So we helped a woman who was a victim of domestic violence.
Yeah.
It's an amazing story. She's, so many of the women that we help really are my inspiration. I feel like they help me more. They motivate me. A victim of domestic violence, and then we don't realize that domestic violence often ends up being tied to homelessness. So having to flee that domestic situation, you abandon everything. So she found herself homeless in a shelter, yet in dire straits. I think she just, her heart, I think social work was always built in this person, in this amazing woman, and she ended up being like one of the lead people at the shelter that other women looked to. She came to us as she was looking for employment, and we suited her for an interview. She ended up getting the job, so she's working, and then from that job, the step-up approach went into social work. She's now a social worker for Clark County, working in one of the schools in Ronzani. And not only that, she's getting her master's degree, and she's thinking of starting her own nonprofit. But now she's tackled an issue that's very specific. I know you guys are going to laugh, because I did tell her, what she's doing is important. One, even before the nonprofit, she actually has a small circle where she helps women, because she saw the challenges that when she went through, that need more financial education. Women really lack in financial education. So she's helping them clean their credits, get just sound finance to get themselves on the feet, because she was also the beneficiary of another program. And this is where nonprofits really, really win, when they collaborate. And I think that's also a unique model that we have, that's one of the reasons too why I joined Dress for Success. We work with over 150 partners. We're better when we partner together. I really do believe that. And so she also benefited from this financial program, and now is paying it forward by helping other women get themselves straight financially and providing that financial education. Now, she still hasn't said 100% yes, but she's thinking of starting the nonprofit, but she's looking at a sector that she sees a tremendous need, working as a social worker in the schools, the middle kid, the school in middle kid age, right? I was very involved with the Nevada State PTA, and I worked as their VP of Resource Development, and also in working with Communities in Schools of Nevada, another great nonprofit. We saw that kid in middle school the danger of falling off was great, but then also there are not enough programs. Many of us just didn't know, even we couldn't seem to make an impact because they're at a precocious age, right? We have a lot of programs that deal with early childhood education to provide that support, right? And lots of data and studies. And then we have a lot of programs at the very high risk, right? With teenagers, with youth. We do it a lot. We had a special program in communities and schools when I worked there, an amazing program called Academy, right? Where we try to provide lots of support for junior and senior kids that were at risk of dropping out, right? So we have those interventions, but that middle-aged school kid, right, that middle school level, it's kind of hard because they're still kids, but they're not yet youth, and there's this fine balance, and it can be really hard to reach that kid. So she's primarily looking at that sector and saying, how can I be more effective, not only as a social worker, or are there other organizations that can address, the kids at this age so that we don't lose them. And I think that's sound, but there's the ripple effect. You invest in a woman, this woman has gone back and paid it forward in so many ways, and it's continuing to grow. We've recently also suited her for a leadership opportunity that she has in August, and so we dressed her with formal attire, and she's going to be doing that, and the sky's the limit for her. So we want more leadership experience, right? So it's just more than taking a woman out of poverty, right? It's seeing that there is a true pathway and growth for this woman, so that not only is she successful in work but in life, and that's critical because the payback, the ROI. If you're really going to look at a population where there's strong ROIs when you invest in women, just it's there. You see that domestically and internationally. When you invest in women, the dividend is just like fourfold.
I would say that I feel that in all aspects of government and society, if we just invest in people, I think it seems like
right.
I have maybe I'm trying to think I'm maybe too far left in some of my thoughts, too liberal. Like, if we invest in the people, that helps the economy, that gets people working, that makes smarter workers, smarter societies, that helps the whole country. And I feel like sometimes in America we're really missing that. That's just, a random.
I think it's true. You have to invest in people. There is something to be said about people that can relate to others. So in this case, this woman can actually talk to other women that have been in the same place she has. And so it's no longer Norma or myself showing up trying to talk about how she can do things, right? There's someone else that can share a story. And so there's that ability. But people also have to help themselves. Okay, that's a big key. It's good to have social services and social programs that help, but you need to help yourself. In this case, she pulled herself out of poverty. All people did was gave her a path. Funding came, people like Norma led the way to make sure she had access, but she got herself out of poverty, and that's the key. Social programs only work if people want to be part of it, right? They want to progress, they want to see change. If you don't want to see change, no matter what you give them, you're not going to move them. Right?
Yeah, can't change somebody if they don't want to change.
Correct.
Right? Yeah.
And so there's the perfect balance that programs in our communities help people that want to be helped. Their programs are always doing outreach to everyone. So there's not I'm going to help you and not you. Everyone has access. Sometimes it's how they take that access and run with it. It's the big difference, right? You take a kid. There's a program that I actually love. There's the Nevada Foundation, Blind Children's Foundation, and they're the first school in the state of Nevada for blind children. We funded the program through the foundation, through the employee foundation a few years back. That's how they opened up, right?
Yeah.
And in one of the programs, they used to have this little boy who was just going to school normally, and when the executive director actually told me the story, and I was in tears, when they asked the kid what he wanted to do when he was older, he says, well, there's not much for me to do. I'm blind, so I'm going to drive the bus or ride the bus back and forth, until that's it. They started the program and they started giving this kid the resources, right? The ability to read, the ability to understand, the ability to do things, to build things.
Yeah.
He liked to build things. He's now planning to go to college. The age when he started and he gave made that comment was 9. At age 13, his world had completely changed because there was a program out there that met his needs, that allowed him to see the potential in him when before
His world was
see
small.
Yeah, his world
Couldn't
was so
see a
small.
future.
Correct. And like that, you have all this network of people and groups that have the right intentions, and if you match them up with the right people, the success is always going to be there. Now, however, I don't know, Norma's job is to get herself out of a job, right? And I guess that would mean that I will get myself out of a job because there's no one to fund. But
Good luck, you two.
Yeah.
But
That's the ideal, right? I mean, we're nowhere near there. Nowhere near there.
you're saying
I
you
want to
wanna-
see all women out of poverty.
Yeah.
You know, that's the ideal. That's the dream, right? A world in a vision where women do not live in poverty, can live with dignity, can contribute to their families and the community. That's the world I want to live in. But, you know, it takes a heck of a lot of work, you know, but
and aggravation sometimes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You sit there and you look over, and not every program can be funded.
Yeah.
As a funder, sometimes you look at applications that come in and you can't make sense of what they ask you for, right? So what did you apply for? I mean, I literally read a grant this year that there was a whole sentence missing. So they wrote about the program, asked me for $100,000 nonetheless,
Yeah.
and left probably the most important sentence completely out of the application.
Wait, what's the most important sentence? Of what we do, or?
Yes, and the impact.
Okay, gotcha.
So if you just tell me, I am going to build a house, it's going to be a house for, give me $100,000. Could be, if it's a house for a dog, I definitely don't think it's going to need $100,000. If it's a house
Yeah.
for a family, then it might need $100,000. So there's still this growth that needs to happen in the nonprofit world, right? Where they have to understand that they're because there's so many nonprofits here in Southern
Right,
Nevada,
right.
they're all competing for the same money.
Wait, you
If
don't care about homeless dogs?
I do. I have two. I have two not homeless dogs, by the way. My dogs are definitely not homeless. They're spoiled brats. I also have a cat, so I have great love for animals at this point.
Okay.
But you know, you have to be able to. Let me just go back. You said something about I tried to explain how nonprofits were businesses, right?
Yes.
You start with the heart, but you develop the business.
Yes.
Norma's business acumen means that she's going to write a grant or give me a proposal that I can pitch to my leadership
Yeah.
as a good investment.
there has to be a case for support. You have to
Correct.
justify those dollars. You have to
Yeah.
show that impact. And
But
so
was this-
when there's that missing sentence of what you intend to do, you know, that's tough to fund, you know? And I think a lot of people don't get it when they will say, oh, you know, you have a really hard job. It must be so depressing doing the work that you do. I find it very uplifting. I think sometimes on the other hand, I think people glamorize Maria Jose's job or the job of funders. And I think it's very, very difficult to be at that table because you want to be able to fund as many organizations as you can. You want to make as much impact as possible. So it is super difficult to say no, but it also must be very frustrating when you see an organization that has potential, but they they don't have the business. They can't make a case for support. You can't justify those dollars.
No,
And that's a really
Maria
hard work.
Jose's job was to write those giant checks.
It is.
The big cardboard size.
Yeah,
People-
the cardboard
Yeah,
checks. Yeah, you take those to the
bank.
ATM. They work really well.
Yeah. People think that my job consists of giving out those big checks,
With the
Making it
giant
rain.
pen,
Yeah.
Just making it rain.
and just showing up to events and
Yeah.
shaking hands, and that's not true. I mean, Norma is
Kissing
correct.
babies and just throwing darts. That's how she selects her grants. She just puts the names on the dartboard.
That is not
and
true,
just
but
throws
it
the
sounds like
darts.
some days it sounds like a good idea. It's there's a lot of strategy behind it, right? You take a corporation like MGM. I have an amazing chairman.
Yeah.
He is a guy that has lived here in Vegas for a very long time. He's very involved in the community, and he wants to know what's going on, right?
Yeah.
So you have the responsibility, because I work for him, to ensure that every dollar that the company gives me, because I don't generate any revenue. My team does not generate revenue. We get to spend the money, right? But we
Yeah.
get to spend the money and invest it in community. So my job is really hard because I have to pitch programs that have a long-standing impact.
You have to show that you're not wasting the money.
Correct.
Yeah.
That I'm not just funding friends and family or funding someone that had a good idea. A lot of things
Oh,
come
I
from
thought those
good
were
ideas.
here.
Sorry. Just to mention.
This podcast is not getting funding from the MGM.
Yeah, it's definitely not.
I have a
Just be clear.
I have a nonprofit mechanic shop, and then you can drop off your dogs there.
That will be very interesting to see.
I want to see you make a case for support for that.
Yeah.
Yes. If you're going for a job interview, we'll give you an old Saturn or an old Buick that we fixed up.
Just make sure your cans are clean, please. So it's it's a lot harder to say no.
Right.
Yeah.
We have a running joke sometimes. We say people that do what I do for other corporations or other businesses, it seems like some days we don't like anything.
Oh,
People, animals, anything, houses, food.
So you have a giant no stand?
Yeah, it's just, I have a button that
No.
says no. My team actually gave me one. And it's not that, it's that I can't fund everything, right? We don't have unlimited funding.
Right.
I actually had someone at a talk I gave a couple days ago who asked me if we would provide long-term funding to support all the families that are still unemployed. And there is no program in the city that can do that long-term, right?
Yeah.
Even welfare, you still have to qualify and somehow make it there.
Right.
But you have to be very cautious and very responsible with funding, because if I make a mistake and the community pays for it, right?
Yeah.
And my responsibility is to make sure that the best programs make it,
Yeah.
right? That's the job.
So you're doing a good job so far.
So far, they kept me there. So I'm guessing yes, somewhat.
You didn't fund any nonprofits or foundations that you regret? You can't say it, probably.
I cannot.
That sounds like a yes.
I don't know that you regret.
No.
I don't know that you regret anything, right? Because when you fund things, when you look at the community, I can tell you, I've been doing this almost my entire life. There was a small piece of my world that went to operations, but then I went back to nonprofit. All causes are good. People start nonprofits with the right intentions, which is helping others, right? Our city has gone through some really tough times, from the recession to COVID to October 1. October 1, we
Yeah.
remember that.
Yeah.
And a lot of people used to say that Vegas doesn't have a heart because all they saw was the strip, right? This touristy side.
Party.
Yeah. But when October 1 happened,
So for our listeners, October 1 is the biggest mass shooting in U.S. history. Was at the country concert, was at the Route 95 concert. So if anybody doesn't know what that is, that was a huge event for our city in such a negative way, because it was a terrible event that there was no good. There was just, a crazy man, shot a bunch of people. So it was
heartbreaking.
yeah. And so there were so many people that were at the concert and got killed that it impacted our entire city. There were so few people. There wasn't anybody that wasn't touched by that in some way, right?
and people came together. Community showed up. It didn't matter, right? People went to hospitals and just donated blood because that's what we needed. People made sandwiches and took them to first responders. I mean, it was just this big show of community, which is the side of Vegas that people don't get to see.
Yeah.
I happen to live in the most amazing city with the heart of gold.
Yeah.
We have this beautiful access to the best entertainment in the world, right? Restaurants, shows, name it.
Yeah.
We have all this. But beyond the glitz, when you turn around, you find people that care about each other. During the recession, we had some of the best years on our foundation's fundraising. People gave more. The people that were still working gave more so they can support the people, their co-workers that weren't working. And the same thing happened during the pandemic. 2020, we were shut down for most of the year. And we still were able to do grants this year and gave out $3.5 million in community support.
Right.
And that's in the middle of a pandemic where we didn't have fundraising activities.
Are you saying a lot of the funds that you're administering are coming from MGM employees just giving of their own, or is that not the right understanding?
No. So there's two funds, right?
Yeah.
There's the MGM Resorts Foundation, which has got a very long-standing grant process, right? And
Yeah.
there's the corporation. The corporation does also donate. Last year we gave out about $15 million worth in community assistance across all of our regions. And I repeat, we were closed, right?
Yeah.
So there wasn't that revenue. But you have the commitment of being a good community partner. Our executives, myself, our employees, they all live and work here. They raise children here. They have grandchildren here. So it's this big paying it forward. It's really important.
The first one you said was the there was the corporation, the second one, and then what was the first
Foundation.
one?
And the foundation.
What's the what is the foundation?
So our MGM Resorts Foundation was created in 2002, and in essence, it's a pass-through from MGM donations, employee donations. For instance, there's 3 programs. One is my direct designations. So as an employee of MGM, I can choose that to donate directly to nonprofits. But instead of writing a check every month to a nonprofit, I do it through payroll deduction, and the foundation staff, which is the team that works with me, disperses those dollars out to the community. So it's really easy because at the end of the year, if I have more than one nonprofit, I just get one tax letter that you give to the accountant and you're done.
Yeah.
And the second program is the Community Grant Fund, which is the grant that funded Dress for Success. So throughout the year, we do fundraising events, all kinds of things, from a taco fundraiser where the EDR one day closes its doors and all you have is Taco Tuesday, right? And people donate. And we raise funds, goes into this big bucket across.
I support tacos.
I do too, and they're really good. And so we do little random events here and there. There's a couple of partnerships we have with some business partners that also help contribute to this.
Yeah.
And then once a year, we open it up for community support, right? So nonprofits like Dress for Success and others submit applications. We review it. And when I say we, is 2 employees from each Southern Nevada property review grants. So I don't make the decisions. I don't get to say Norma's project is great and, Joe Blow's mechanic, it's not great. Sorry.
Emmett's dog mechanics is fantastic.
It's not working for me. We hear. So that's the second. Once a year it does. And then the third is the Employee Emergency Grant, which helps employees in time of need, of financial need, with short-term assistance, because it's a grant, so it's not considered income.
So is it fair to say that Norma's nonprofit in Southern Nevada is popular? Because it's effectively getting voted on by employees. Is that in a way?
You could say that. I mean, you could also tell Norma that she wrote a really great grant that concentrated on the long-term impact that her nonprofit's going to have in the life of women in general, along with the ability to find other partners, right? There's nothing a nonprofit can do alone. Yeah. And I'm usually a big critic of if Norma's nonprofit is to, it's employment and training, right? She dresses them, she provides them with the resources, partners with others. If tomorrow she comes back and says, I'm going to use that money you gave me to open a food pantry, I'm going to tell her, stop, that's not your focus. Okay.
It's a different story.
That's for that. Can we refer you out to 3 Square, please?
Yeah.
Can we just don't use the fund for that, because there's someone else doing a much better job just in that area.
You can't beat 3 Square.
No, I couldn't. I wouldn't even attempt to. And awesome. And talk about partnership. That's what 3 Squares does too. When I worked with communities and schools of Nevada, we had sort of a safe room for the kids, right? Those kids that are high risk, where the site coordinator was, we sort of created a safe space for them that felt like a lounge, right? And we did have a closet full of school supplies, uniforms, whatever they needed, and food. And 3 Squares would provide those weekend bags. And so you are the best. I love what Maria Jose says. When
we
you
funded
harness.
the weekend bags, just so you know.
We
were the funders of
yes,
that.
There you go.
There you go.
So, and then the pandemic hit, right? What happens? We realized how critical schools were, especially to communities of needs, right? Families that live in poverty. When that safety net fell out, 3 Squares, just like with organizations like Communities in Schools, and with the Clark County School District, right, designated drop-off sites where people could drive and get their food for their kids, right, if they weren't getting lunch, because sometimes that's the only meal that the kid got. And so I think that that's the best way that we can innovate. When we were in crisis, I think it took several nonprofits, and we did the same thing at Dress for Success, right? Especially, I think it was super challenging for nonprofits. We give direct human services, so that human contact, especially for someone who comes from poverty, from trauma, right? It's very difficult to ask for help. There are a lot of misconceptions about people that live in poverty and what happens to brains, because I say poverty is trauma. And so not to be able to be in person, right, and to provide those human services was really, really challenging. But I think it was through partnerships, public and private, and nonprofits coming together, working together, that we were able to innovate, to find ways, even in the most difficult circumstances, when we may have had to shutter some of those physical services, to find ways to innovate so that we can get the need that our community, required. And so I think that is, I cannot emphasize more how critical partnerships are.
Yeah, it's definitely human touch. If you didn't have the human touch telling a blind child at age 9 that he could be anything he wanted, today he would be still thinking that the best thing he could do is ride the bus up and down the strip, right? Where today he's probably out to college at this point.
Right. So people need the opportunities, right? We know that this child had the potential all along, right? But his world was limited. That's what poverty does, or not having the resources for a disability, right, that could be addressed, right? So his world was small. Then having that opportunity, right, because the charity didn't do it. It's an amazing charity, an amazing organization that focuses on children, and they've long-standing, so they've demonstrated their sustainability, right? That's when I say look at nonprofits that have impact. See how they've been driving impact ongoingly, right? This is not an organization that was an offshoot at one time, right? That continues to show its success, its impact on the community. But the way this child's life was changed, right, is by giving that opportunity. Children have the potential. Women have the potential, right? But we have to open the doors. We have to remove those obstacles and those barriers, the inequities, right? And we have to address that. And also, too, through trauma-informed care, because oftentimes we are dealing with trauma. And, we may get frustrated with some of the decisions that some folks make, but we have to understand, what's causing that thinking, right? And when you're on survival mode, you may not make the best decisions.
Yeah, but I think also on the other side, though, now you've taken revenue away from the bus company. We have to there's two sides to every coin.
Oh my God.
Is that not where we're going with that?
At dinner, the last time I had dinner with you, something that you brought up. This is a bit a tangent from what you were talking about earlier, but if you want to jump back to the other topic, that's totally fine. You brought up that with philanthropy and then nonprofit, if you're trying to help either minorities or people in help, but yet the philanthropy often is from maybe a rich white person or a rich, I think.
Well, it's an issue, right? We have an issue of diversity, equity, right? And we talk about Maria Jose talked about the diversity, equity, and inclusion program, and MGM has been leading in that for quite some time. They it's not a buzzword for them. They've lived it. I think that's one of the things that when I look at a partnership, and I think about it as a nonprofit too, because I don't approach it from a poverty mindset. I also want to partner with organizations that I believe in, right? And that's one of the things that I respect the most about the MGM is that they've had a long-standing history in diversity with their employees, and across the board, they've really tried to address that. So the nonprofit sector, like the for-profit, we are challenged, just like you've seen the advertising sector, right? When you look at the diversity, we have a lot of diversity within our program, folks. Where we don't have a lot of diversity and we see a lot of the inequities, right? And lack of representation is at the very top. And also who we view as philanthropists, right? Oftentimes, who we see as philanthropists or who we see sitting on the board. I think that's where we're most challenged as nonprofits, right? And that I'm pleased that some funders are demanding that when they allocate dollars to nonprofits, that their boards be diversified, that they reflect the community that they're serving. We do not have enough representation with women. It breaks my heart. I mean, I think Nevada, though, has been stellar. We have a lot of EDs, which is not very common, really, to see a lot of executive directors at the head of their nonprofits that are Latina, that are Black, and that are women. You don't see that a lot. But then also on the benefactor, right? We still have an old world view of benefactors when we think about, those leading wealthy philanthropists, right? They tend to be white old men. Sorry, white old men. Not that there's anything against you, but
we'll take your money.
Right?
Send it.
But what happens when you just have that and you don't have diversity, right? You are looking through limited lenses. So you have white older males addressing the needs of communities of color, telling whether it's especially international, that's when it even gets more painful. I've worked in international nonprofits, and that's where I really look to dismantle that, right? And if so, my philanthropist or those who I'm seeking funds from, especially when it comes to individual giving, are primarily white old men. You create a benefactor and recipient relationship, and we need to do away with that, right? Because we want to empower, right? We want people to sustain on themselves, to become self-sufficient. You use that word, that's really critical, right? If it's just charity for charity's sake, and then we're really looking at things through the wrong lenses. For example, we have to address the pandemic through gender lenses. Clearly, I'm looking at it that way, when women are the ones that are most disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. If we don't look at it through gender lenses, we're really not going to fully address the issue.
Can you talk about that more? I mean, does that mean more women left their jobs or lost their jobs during the pandemic? Or what are some ways that...
So the pandemic has unveiled a lot of things. Is it that COVID-19 brought in domestic violence, or is it that COVID-19 brought in gender inequity or racial inequity? No, these things were there. So when you have a crisis, right, you have a global health crisis that in turn, right, has economic consequences, right? We see that those most vulnerable groups, right, are the ones that are most impacted. One of my board members actually made a great analogy, and I loved it. Yesterday we were at a meeting, and she said, think about it like a carousel, right? Think about the folks riding that carousel, and think about those that are at the edge of the carousel. That carousel starts spinning, right? If you're at the bottom of the carousel, you're the first one to get flung out. That's what's happened with those that are living in poverty, those that unfortunately are communities of color, right? Gender, when you've had these wage gaps, we've seen with women, right? We've made strides, we've made tremendous strides. We're not 100% there, right? But those strides are unraveling because women have been disproportionately impacted. Globally, in December of 2020, all the job losses nationwide were female. In the state of Nevada, in September of 2020, women fared 78 points worse than men in unemployment, right? Why? So we still have women that are having to deal with the burden, right? The burden of childcare, of caregiving. And caregiving, it's not necessarily just childcare, right? Let's say you look at a woman that lives in poverty, multi-generational home, right? They have barriers in access to healthcare. If you remember in the early on, in trying to get the vaccines, you had to make appointments. How about if you don't have access to technology? There's a language barrier, right? You have that elderly grandmother that maybe lives in that household, most likely, ended up sick with COVID, right? So now you have to take care of an elderly, and then you have to homeschool your kid. How is that woman going to fare, right? How is, when we look at those inequities, right? How is she going to be able to sustain that job? And then worse yet, when you look at the representation of women in the service industry as frontline workers, we overrepresent that industry. So we were severely impacted. And so those are many of the things that we've seen. Domestic violence also. The worst thing that can happen in domestic violence is for you to be isolated, to be there with your perpetrator, right? And that's what, unfortunately, the pandemic restrictions did. Substance abuse, same thing, right? You fall off the wagon, you need a network of support. Mental health spiked up, all these issues. But I think more so because we still also have we're dealing with women still being lower wage earners. That's one, right? So that's the wage gap inequity. And then two, just the burden of caregiving. And so when those safety nets fall out, most impacted tend to be women. And then women were primarily highest at risk too, and their households for COVID, because we were frontline workers. We're overrepresented in those industries.
When you ask a woman to go back to work, I may want to go back to work, but without school, without daycare, without safety, who's going to take care of my 6 and 10-year-old, right? They're not old enough for them to stay, so they can stay alone. So there was this also misperception that women didn't want to go back to work. Some women couldn't go back to work. Right?
Yeah, you're saying that because schools weren't back in.
Correct.
The safety nets were not there. And that burden, listen, those expectations were not there with gender equity, right? Men were unexpected, and that's where you see that those job losses didn't impact men as much. And then also industries that are stereotyped as being female, like caregiving industries, right, where women are putting themselves in the frontline risk. Those are industries too that suffered, right, with the pandemic. And so it's all those. So until we address, right, the burden of caregiving still primarily falls on women, and that's a huge barrier. That's a huge barrier. So until we address that, until those safety nets come back, women won't be able to re-enter the labor market. So while I can get a woman suited, right, I can get her on the interview. If my partners, it's my best interest to work with my partners, right, who provide child care services, right, for them to activate, or for schools, right, those safety nets to come back, to advocate for women in government, right. So while I'm nonpartisan as a nonprofit, it is in my best interest to advocate those barriers that stand in the way of a woman succeeding, of moving forward.
In general, communities of color, right? For some reason, their voice is not necessarily as loud, and something tragic needs to happen. History has taught us that, right? Something tragic needs to happen in order for the issue to be addressed. Otherwise, we just, shove it under the rug and be done with it. We need to start looking at all those things. I think the pandemic also allowed us to look at what we were doing and looking at it a different way. We need to improve certain things. We need to look at the job market, right? How do we address those issues? How do we make sure that a woman can continue to support her family if she's a single parent without having to go back to, an organization's nonprofit, or be self-sufficient? It might be that the workplace might need to be a little more flexible, right?
Correct.
There were organizations that actually opened up daycares just to bring more people back, because there's this huge crisis across the country, employment, right? There's more jobs than there are people that want to take the jobs. And a lot of people blame it on the stimulus checks. People have received an enormous amount of money in stimulus checks, but that's not necessarily the only reason why people couldn't go back to work. I mean, people lost homes. People, multi-generational families are living together. So where before maybe your mom and dad were living in their own apartment, in their own house during the pandemic, that didn't happen. You brought them in, they got sick, and now you have mom, dad, uncle, kids, and
those stressors were huge. How do you focus like that? And so I think, I don't think any woman wants to rely on public assistance. I guarantee you this. I have, in all my years of work, both domestic and international, and even as a volunteer when I worked in the corporate sector, I've never seen someone want to stay. I think we all, as humans, we're more alike than we're different. We all want the same things for ourselves. We want to be able to stand on our own 2 feet. We want the best possible life, an opportunity for our children. I mean, most of us are very, very similar. I've traveled overseas. I haven't, regardless, even if I've sat across families that did not, we couldn't communicate, totally different languages. But what got us together, right, are the same things, right? Breaking bread together, children, we all want the same things. Everyone's going to go where that glass of water is. If you're thirsty, you want the goddamn glass of water, right? And so it's we have to, I think one of the things that make me so sad right now is that I think regardless of where you sit on the political fence, right? Because that's fine. You can belong to multiple parties. There are things that we should have a common agreement in social good and social benefit, right? Because there is an economic stimulus behind it, right? The sooner we get women back in the labor force, people employed, right? Children, like the beautiful child that Maria Jose referred to, right? To have options, that's a contributing member of society. We want contributing members of society. So we're all vested really in making sure that we remove barriers so that everyone can exercise their, whether you believe in a God or whatever you believe, their potential, their natural giving potential. People have the potential. Oftentimes it's just the opportunity that separates them, right? And let's tackle those barriers.
It's also important not to leave anybody behind. And what I mean by that is that we talk about women, children, men, right? But very little sometimes we talk about the elderly.
Yeah.
And so I was just talking to someone that runs a nonprofit here in Henderson, and she was talking about how her senior group is struggling with rent because the rent has gone up so much. Landlords want more money.
And there are fixed incomes, right?
Correct.
Yep.
They've already contributed, right? They've already paid their dues per se, and now they're finding themselves in an environment where they were comfortable, right? They could live within their means, but the economy is kicking them out of their comfort.
Yeah, but if you're 70, you can't go out and get another job. You can't
Correct.
go figure out how to make more money because you're just physically not able.
Correct.
At that point.
And so
Well, maybe not so too, but there's also ageism. We are where we've gone up with our women. Most of the women that we serve with used to be prior to the pandemic, like the demographic used to be always the 31 to 41-year-old woman was our biggest demographic, right? We serve women who are age 16 and up. Anyone who identifies, that's key, identifies as female. Could be a transgender woman, anyone who identifies as female, that's 16 years of age and up, that's either unemployed, underemployed, or socioeconomically disadvantaged, right? So that sweet spot sort of in age demographic, the big one used to be 31 to 41. Now it averages 31 to 51. That's our big average. But then we're seeing also, because we serve all women, there's no age limit, right? So 16 and up, right? And now we're seeing a big also growth in that 51 and plus category, right? Because some, not all, right? And we've seen it, right? There's been conversations that we've had in the US, right? Folks' ability to retire, people working longer, they may not have that ability to retire. But it's very difficult whenever there's a crisis, right? Those are the employees that get aged out or pushed out of the market too quicker. And then for women, boy, we have a way earlier expiration date. Let's just be honest. Thank God that I think it helps me, Latina, looking short, that most, that I get sometimes confused for a child if I wear a cap, God forbid, but it's been to my advantage because, if I go ahead and date myself, if I put all my experience, right, my 15 years worth of experience in the corporate sector, and then my other 15 years of experience in nonprofit plus, and my earlier work, I mean, no one's going to hire me. They're going to look at that timeline.
You're 83 years old?
I'm about 83 years old. That is correct. But I still feel vibrant. And there are a lot of women that we've talked to that don't want to retire. Not only they feel they still have something to contribute. Maybe financially they can't retire too. Also, remember, kids are living, right? We have a whole situation with, college debt, kids living at home. We have what used to be retiree age that are still now living with their kids. So there are challenges. And that's another way that it affects women, ageism across the board, men and women. But it's really harder for women because, like I said, we expire earlier in every industry.
There's also the social issue of grandparents not taking care of their grandchildren, right?
Yes.
For whatever reason, the parents lose custody of the kids. We have an issue. Clark County is one, but it's not the only one in the States where we have a lot of kids in foster care, right? And the first goal is...
Are you saying like if a parent is, like a drug addict or something, then the state will take the kids away from that incapable parent?
Correct.
But you're saying in different circumstances, then the grandparents would then take care of those kids, and that's not happening anymore?
No, it is happening,
Okay.
but then it stops the grandparent from ever retiring.
Oh, I see.
Right.
Yes. Okay.
So you go back to the reason why they still need to be self-sustainable individuals,
Right.
but no one thinks of them, right? Because when you think of a parent and kids, you think of someone between the ages of 20 and 40, right? 45, 50. But then you're looking at grandmothers and grandfathers that are in their 60s, 70s that are raising little children.
Yeah, they got round two.
Yeah, and
Or
that's a
you
lot
can
of work.
have someone like me. I mean, I had my son almost at 41, so
He's 80.
we are having kids older, right?
Right.
Most of my friends, they are becoming empty nesters, and I'm like nowhere near. God damn it, So that's also happening, right? No, but so there are a lot of factors, but I think also just as a society, I think you bring a really good point. We often forget about our elders, and how critical, and we have to have a society where we're more responsible and also see the value. We're not a society that really respects aging. We tend to just erase. We want to sort of do away with it. We discriminate against aging. We don't appreciate the wisdom that comes with aging and the value. And I think when we look at diversity, equity, and inclusion, it should absolutely include age. I know that the teams that I've built in my experience, both corporate and nonprofit, are those teams that are truly diverse because you have diversity of thought. You have different levels of experience. A Gen X is very different than a baby boomer and so on. And those that are older, even seniors. Many of our volunteers are seniors. there, and there is a lot of value in that. So I think it's just that it's that we have to not forget about our elders and the value that they have to society. And oftentimes, you're absolutely right; they're left behind, and few people are looking at that population.
And that's what's sexy sometimes in philanthropy, right? What's cute, what shows, and
Well, so then we need these seniors to have good TikTok accounts.
Yeah,
some of them do. Have you seen some? I mean, I don't have a TikTok
Then
account.
they'll be popular,
no,
right?
but listen, that's the ugly side of philanthropy. Then you bring a very good point. I think oftentimes, or even people, the way they give, right, it's really not to tackle issue or to solve a problem that significantly affects us as a community. It's almost like a whim. Oh, that's cute. That looks good on me. You know, it's like an ego thing. I'll just go ahead and do that. How impactful was that? And that's what I mean by Maria Jose's job being so hard, because you really have to look at metrics. And let me tell you, it's been a long-standing conversation. How do you truly measure poverty when there are multiple cross-cutting issues? It's a very, very hard thing to do. It's a very challenging thing to do. So it is difficult. And oftentimes people just want the photo op or the cute thing, right? Or the thing of the moment. And human beings and communities are not things of the moment.
Yeah, and philanthropy is not a one-time deal either,
Yes.
right? It's a long-term commitment that you will be there to see it through. Because it's easy to write a check, one of those big checks that you want to take to the ATM, those rich checks.
Well, no, I want to put that on my social media that I was involved with a big check.
There you go.
Just want to walk around with one of those big checks.
That would be great, especially if it clears the bank.
Yeah.
But it's easy to give out a check, right? What it's really hard is to build partnerships. It's to be able to sit on the other side of the table and say, okay, so we're going to fund this, but help us understand what else we can do. Funding is one phase of giving. Then we have the volunteering. Norma's organization focuses a lot on volunteering, right?
Yeah.
A lot of nonprofits don't have the budget to hire enormous staff. So volunteering becomes really, really important to them. The partnership, a good partnership should have both the cash, the in-kind, and the volunteering. Mm-hmm. What I mean by in-kind is if we're clearing out our warehouses and we find, I don't know, carpet. This is a perfect example. We had, there was a fire a few years back at the Salvation Army.
Oh.
Their men's shelter caught on fire, and they called the office and said, by any chance, would you have carpet?
Yeah.
And carpet. And then so he explains, he's like, we really need to fix this and fix it right away, because otherwise those men will not have a place to sleep. Turned around, called our warehouse and said, do we have any old carpet from the properties? And what I mean old, it's new. It's just, we just never used it because we either had too much or we changed patterns, whatever it is.
Because Circus already has carpet.
We don't own it anymore, so.
Oh, no, okay.
That's it.
So you don't have to match.
I don't have to match, I don't have to match the carpet.
So if you had some leftover Circus carpet, then
I don't know that anybody has leftover circus carpet at this point, to tell you the truth. So you go back, and the partnership is beyond just the check. We wrote as a company.
Wait, you can't go there. So casino carpets are typically like a wild, crazy pattern, right? Mm-hmm. So is there a wild, crazy casino carpet in the Salvation Army?
I'm sure there is. Yes, I never got to see it because COVID hit right after that, so no one could go visit. They have a brand new executive director that I met a couple weeks ago, a couple months actually, and he's great. He's definitely looking forward to see that crazy carpet.
We need you to send us a picture of the carpet.
I will definitely send you a picture of the carpet. But that's just an example of the in-kind, right?
Yeah.
They could have gone out and bought carpet at Home Depot or one of those stores. We had it. They were able to come and get it, use it, put it to good use. So there's the cash, the in-kind, and then the volunteer work. People that go out and talk to the men at their location and tell them about job opportunities and all the other stuff. Yeah. That's a true partnership. It's multi-level. It's not one time deal. It's easy to give a check. Again, it's hard to be partners. And you also get to fire partners sometimes.
And just adding to that in-kind could also be intellectual property, right? For example, many organizations like Maria Jose or corporate businesses too help with giving their resources. You guys have a program where you help nonprofits, right? Learn, I think it's marketing. There was, you guys do something, I forget what you invite.
procurement team?
Maybe it's the procure. I can't remember. Well, you do with the points, and that's another thing with in-kind that I learned in conversation. We had a printer that wasn't working for us, and this is the thing. Listen, nonprofits run mean and lean. We use as much of our dollars, at least the good ones, right? We want it to go towards programming. So you have no idea how creative we can get sometimes, right? And so our printer broke down, and we do a lot of our collateral also just in-house. It's just a lot of things that you just have to innovate. And I learned that I can harness the power of a corporation, a business like MGM, because they obviously procure a huge amounts, right? So they can get great deals, and they have these whole point program, right? And I was able to get a printer with points. Man, it's like the heavens open up for me. When you're a nonprofit, I never saw such a beautiful printer in my life. These things are just like huge, because those are the days that really suck, because we lack a lot of infrastructure sometimes. Those are the days that I really, really struggle, when everything is breaking down. And then that's what keeps me up at night. Then that's a woman that I can help with my programs that she may not be able to put food on the table. So you may not think, what does a printer have to do with that? It allows me literally to function, right?
Now, in my defense, I had no idea we actually earned points every time we purchased toner and things like that. And it was one of our departments, and this is part of the company and the people that work in there, right? I'm the person that it's the face of philanthropy right now, right? But she actually looked at the points and said, hey, we're going to lose the points. Called me up and said, can we make donations and get nonprofits, maybe printers that they may need. And so it just happened that she needed a printer and I knew about it. And I'm like, okay, let's just use the points. Yeah. Right. So it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to take care of our community. And it's everyone, right? Someone that I had no idea we were earning points, but now I do know, right?
Is Norma calling you all the time now, checking on your points?
How many points? How many points? Do we have any more
She only gets a one-time deal. It is a one-time deal.
It's amazing that there's so many ways that a for-profit can look at all the ways they can harness the power, right? This is a global organization, right? It's not just domestic, right? And you can harness that power of all those deals, all the ways that you impact, and then look back at your nonprofit partners and see, hey, can we do, like she said, partnerships are hard, right? You're not just thinking one way. How can we best leverage what we have as a for-profit, right, organization to help and create social good? Right? And in so many ways. And those partnerships are so critical for nonprofits, right? Because if I just get, as much as I love the dollars for a one-time grant, but then I can't use it in other ways. I mean, for us, a huge part of our model is in kind. I rely, like when you talk about that community goodness, like when things have happened, crisis, listen, the pandemic, we had the best problem. We have our warehouse full with clothing donations. I mean, excess, where I couldn't even
spring cleaning.
Are they only like office clothes though?
Mostly, what we require is professional attire, but we did have to innovate. And so we also, because unfortunately the pandemic also drove homelessness up. We are up about the women that we serve, 16% up, in homelessness. And so we're providing more what we call professional other items that we didn't before. So we need bras, undergarments have become really critical, basic needs, hygiene kits that we do it in a very dignified way. We put it in the purses. Sometimes we can do that with nonprofits. We've done it before. We'll do it with other corporations, not just MGM. Sands has provided us, because they have a strong hygiene program, with some of those kits that we include in a crossbody bag. So it's all really very dignified. We have a very curated concierge approach to our services. Awesome. So a woman doesn't feel like she's being case managed by us. I think that definitely is the secret sauce that I love in Dress for Success, the dignity in which it's provided. So when a woman comes in, and I say that point of entry being the suit, it's a cute boutique, right? Wouldn't you say? You've been it, you've seen it. You guys haven't. No. I'm not going to address you guys, but maybe I can. I don't know.
No, but you don't want to give somebody, hey, you need some deodorant.
No, not at all.
There's a toothbrush.
Listen, you do have to have those tough conversations though when you work on her side. I've done it.
They're matched with a personal stylist, right? And that also is what that creates that cycle of trust. I say we're a one-stop shop for self-esteem. And it's all that then you get into those deeper issues, those barriers that are preventing that woman.
I can tell you this, I think I was about 13 or 14, and my grandma gave me a whole package of deodorants and toothpaste and like all hygiene products. I'm like, what's she trying to tell me? What's going on here? And it turned out that she was having fun coupon shopping, and she had a ton of this stuff that she got like $1 off double coupon.
I need to talk to your grandma.
It's like, can you exchange numbers here, please?
I don't think the coupons aren't as good as they used to be.
That's why there's 99-cent stores, right?
Yeah,
So there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So back in the day, there used to be double coupons, and you could get. She would walk out of the store with, with like a 35-cent bill, with, like a cart full of stuff.
I think there's
who is your enemy? We're back. We're coming in live.
I guess injustice. I would say that injustice is my biggest enemy.
Ignorance.
Greed, ignorance, lack of education too, just across the board for all of us, right? We need opportunities in education, but it's also having faulty set of assumptions about communities of color. I've gotten in my day some doozy, not only myself being Latina doing philanthropy, but also assumptions about the population that I serve, and it's really, it really is heartbreaking, honestly, and as much as it angers you, because that faulty thinking can have huge repercussions, especially at the very top leadership, especially with government. And
I was going to ask earlier about, I think this ties in. So as an enemy, diversity, even in the higher areas of your board of directors. I think during dinner, me and you, where you brought it up, you were saying that if the board of directors, if the diversity doesn't match the company goal or mission, there's also a breakdown because the board of directors have a certain
fiscal responsibility, and they're really, the job of the board is to be the custodian of the mission. So they're not to get into the weeds of operations, but certainly the custodians. So if they're the custodians of the mission, and then there's a disconnect with the population that you're serving as a mission, well, how effective of a custodian are you going to be? So I'm proud and happy to say that we've really worked hard with Dress for Success, and I would say even globally. Our global CEO is African American. We have a lot of diversity, obviously lots of women in the organization. I'm proud that I'm an executive director of Dress for Success Southern Nevada as a Latina, right? I can speak to the community. I don't. So for me, diversity is not a buzzword. It's a lived experience, right? I know what it's like, right? I have my own personal experience. I think I'm a little unique in that I try to tell people that I've lived in two worlds, and I think we just recently had that conversation where I don't even think most people know that, but I've lived on both sides of the coin, where I've experienced privilege and affluence, and I'm a fair-skinned Latina, so certainly privilege comes with being more fair-skinned, but also just socioeconomically, right? My life in Ecuador, very different. My parents moved here not looking for the American dream. It wasn't, an economic driver for them. My parents were separated. My mom was a very traditional woman and sought to repair the relationship. But we had no idea how my amazing dad was living the crazy vida loca here, bohemian, and really in some of the worst areas of New York City. My mom thought she was moving to like those pretty high-risers you saw in a postcard. She had no idea what she was getting herself into. And I tell you, when we talk about things that I'm scared, you can put a snake around me. You can fill a room with spiders, nothing. You put me in a room with just one cockroach or a mice, and I will freaking have a heart attack. Because it signified poverty when I moved into, we talk about the ghettos, right? I never knew what an inner city poor area was like. And it was highly traumatic for me and my family to adjust to that. And also what we do, I think, to ethnic communities here, right? As far as I was concerned, here I am, a kid from Ecuador, right? I had never heard of the word Hispanic. Mm-hmm. It's got the word panic on it. It can't possibly be good. What's a Hispanic? I remember when my parents sacrificed so much, they immediately did put us, because my mom thought that public schools here in the state was just going to filled with you crazy hippies. So she was like so concerned that her kids will be running around naked and on drugs, right, if they go to the public schools.
Wow.
So that's...
I was at the wrong school.
Right? That's what all she kept on thinking was like, oh my God, I think she had images of Woodstock. I don't know. So we did end up going to a private school. My parents worked so much. The typical immigrant story, right? Both had multiple jobs, just amazing, sacrifice so much for us. But what they did immediately at the school is they paired me with another kid that they thought, well, he's Hispanic, or she, a couple of us kids that were Latino. They paired us all together, right?
Yeah.
thinking that we were going to understand each other. And so you have a Cuban, an Ecuadorian that are struggling to have a conversation because one, we don't even speak the same. Like I had never heard a Cuban like the speed.
Cubans got their own Spanish.
Their own Spanish. The same thing I've learned. I always say I speak multiple languages. I speak Mexican. I speak Dominican. I speak Ecuadorian. It's colloquial. We're very different. In Latin America, we don't all even share the same language. Some countries in Latin America, English, that people don't think about, right? And that are in South America. We have Portuguese, we don't. So I think all of a sudden to just lump people together. We see it in voting, right? We see how Latinos voted, right? Everyone every year touts the Latino vote. The Latino vote is going to be the watershed decision, and Democrats are always clamoring the Latino vote, right? Look how Latinos vote in Miami versus how Latinos vote in New York, And
Are
I
you saying
think that's part of the
Cubanos are different than
stereotype.
Puerto Ricanos?
No, but that, you know who actually changed? Because they thought that the tide was going to change. Venezuelans. People forgot about Venezuelans, right? What were they escaping and leaving? And their experience with socialism, right? But they thought, sure enough, we've got more diversity. We've got a bunch of Latinos. We're going to win the Democrat. So it's, once again, not understanding the group, the lived experience. So for me, being Latino or being Ecuadorian, it's not a buzzword. It's a lived experience. I don't have to hit a check mark or watch my words or all these things that we do that we think it's PC, that sometimes a lot of, Liem, progressives or liberals do, right? For me, it's my lived-in experience. So it's not just like for you also, right? My family's blended, right? We're Asian, African-American, Latino, right? But my kid just looks Puerto Rican, just in case. No one's going to think he's African-American, Ecuatoriano, Thai. No one would ever identify him as such. But, I think that we have to also be sensitive to trust people and their lived experience, right? And also just meet people where they're at, right? So the fact I think that I've navigated both of these worlds of privilege and being more affluent, right? And navigating then the experience of an immigrant, right? Living in low income communities. I can speak to it because it was my experience, sure. Not in Nevada, but definitely in New York. I know what it's like to also be judged or have this false sense of assumptions. I know what it's like to be that kid in the bus that I got to a point, and my poor mother suffered so much because she was like, oh my gosh, where did you guys lose your ambition along the way? But also poverty shrinks your world. Like when the kid said, you know what, my end goal is just to sit in this bus, go back and forth, that's it. I got to a point where even though I had a different frame of reference, right? My mom was an educator, right? You would think that I would have been different. But when you are living in poverty, and that's what I say, it's traumatic, right? When you have less than, your world shrinks and your self-esteem is highly impacted, right? When my friends are dying and I'm going to funerals, when I'm living in shootouts, when I'm exposed to so much social ills, when we live in culinary deserts, my mom who, listen, she loves to cook and it's super healthy, but still it's hard to find good food.
Were you in a gang?
I wasn't, I was the weirdest kid. So here I am. I was such a strange kid. So picture this.
They won't find you.
Little Norma. I look, you know who I look like? Do you guys remember? I'm probably too old. Do you remember Tootsie? No. Do you guys know who Dusty Hoffman played Tootsie? He got dressed. He was dressed in drag.
You're older than you look.
So yeah, I'm way older. Anyway, Coke bottle glasses.
You are 84 years old.
But I am 84 years old. Not just black.
I love their face.
No idea. What? Who is? You guys, everyone's gonna Google Tootsie, okay? Dusty Hoffman. It's a good movie. Watch it. But anyhow, that's how I look like as an 8-year-old. I look like this.
Was that
middle-aged
Mrs.
man.
Doubtfire in the 80s? Is that what it was?
It was kind of a little younger, but that's what I look like as an 8-year-old. Okay. But I was this kid because I had different upbringings that I related to the kids that were at risk of dropping out. One of my best friends was the bully. But I found common bond with the bully. And then my other best friend was the straight A student. Because I think I've lived on different worlds, right? I know what it's like to have and not to have. And so I think also too, early on I had to wear leg braces and everybody thought I was handicapped. So, or that if the braces, were removed, that I would just full, or I had polio. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I would get like the craziest looks. I just have a little bit
how
of
old, how old were you at that time? Because for a kid, that's a very...
I had to wear, they were painful, leg braces. I had to wear boots too to go to sleep. So I have a little bit of a curvature in my spine.
Yeah.
And then into it, there's like an issue with the bridge on my foot. This explains why I'm so clumsy, Maria Jose. At least it's just, I'm not regular. Please, everybody
That's her
who knows
story.
me,
It's just sticking to
everybody
it.
who knows me knows that I could just be perfectly fine
This is
standing.
why you're always kicking shit?
It just happened yesterday. Me and my
You're always
hubby
kicking my cat.
went out to eat, and I did an ice capade mood for no apparent reason. There was nothing slippery on the floor. I wasn't drunk. I wish I was. I wish I could say, blame it on the alcohol. No, I'm not that fun, boring. I just had a fish taco, people. And I literally almost do like an ice capade. Split, my leg went one way. It's just what I do. So I'm naturally very clumsy. I'll blame it on my small curvature in the spine and my lack of bridge on my feet. I don't know. So I used to wear orthopedic shoes and these leg braces. So I think I know what it's like also to feel, because when you're perceived as someone with a disability or a handicap, you are also erased, and lots of assumptions are made about who you are. So I think it was weird that I was this kid with I had almost like triangle hair, Coke bottle glasses, leg braces that got along with like the bad kids and the good kids. It was
It's
it was
quite a
interesting.
picture you painted here.
Oh my God, you have to see my folks, my
need a
pictures.
picture.
I always say I had listen, my pictures were so bad all the way to high school. First of all, I will always photograph poorly. But it was so bad.
You
I'll
look great
tell
on
you.
camera right now.
I don't know.
Tell.
So I'll tell you. So my high school, right, when they handed out the yearbook, at one point I was a little bit of a rebel. I went to a private school all the way to sophomore year. And then I got tired, mostly all nuns. I love the nuns. But the nuns got the best of me, and I rebelled a little bit. And I
still
decided,
afraid.
I decided without my parents knowing, I had very traditional parents, right? And you guys know, also being ethnic, being Asian, your parents, especially the expectations of a migrant parent, holy shit. So I decided on my own I was going to be smart that day, because my principal, I didn't like the way she was talking to me. I don't know what it was. And so my ego got the best of me, and she said something like, if you don't improve, you're going to go to summer school for math. And so I was like, well, you know what? I'm not going to summer school for math. And can you give me my records? I'm pulling myself out of school. And so I thought I was a big, big person. Wow, I really exercised my adulthood here, right? I walked out, and then I was like, oh my God. Parents are gonna kill me. Oh my God, what am I gonna do? And then of course the curses in Spanish, like, oh Lord Jesus, de mierda que he hecho. So I had to go, and my parents really gave me, talk about tough love, the biggest lesson. I ended up going to one of the worst public schools. It was across from where we lived, and I was like, Mom, there's been like gang fights there. Like, you can't send me there. My first year, guess where I spent it? In the library, hiding out. I couldn't even eat lunch in the cafeteria. I was so scared. My first day in school, a kid ripped. We had all those old wooden desks that were on the floor. He ripped the desk. That was my first day. And then I saw what looked like tumbleweed until I realized it was two girls aggressively fighting with each other.
Is this in the Bronx, or where are you at?
So this is in Washington Heights, the upper west tip of Manhattan.
Okay.
I won't name the school.
No, that's fine. We don't know New York, but
yeah, let's just say a couple of my one teacher, my math teacher, a gun got pulled on him. My gym teacher got arrested for inappropriate behavior. And this was my senior year.
Doing gymnastics with some of the students.
So this is just, I went to a pretty rough school, but you know what? I had it. My parents made me live out my decision. I begged. I was like, take me across town, take me to one of the suburbs in New Jersey. I want to be good. I want to be with the good straight A kids. I changed my mind, and they teased me for a bit. My dad did. He took a day off from work, and that's a huge sacrifice, right? He had two jobs, and I remember him walking, so upset, right? And walked me, took the bus, and then said, I'm not doing this because I would have to drive you. And you are not bright enough to get on the bus by yourself.
That is terrible.
But it's my
Well, she does get lost. So.
Hey, listen, right? I haven't changed much. There's no internal GPS with me. And, he said, no, you're going to have to suffer the consequences. And my mom, who, obviously worried about hippies, let me tell you, all that worry went out the window when she was like, yeah, you did this. You thought you were smart enough to pull yourself out of a private school that we sacrificed for. Well, you're going to live with the consequences of your decision. And I graduated from this unruly school. But the irony too is that I met some of the best, and this is where I have so much respect for public school. I met some of the best teachers there. I'll never forget one of my math teachers. My history teacher. Amazing. I took classes. I'm EMT certified. Please don't ever make me work as an EMT because I probably flunk and kill you. But all these amazing classes, teachers who, didn't get paid anything, who had to work. Our textbooks were from the 1960s. Talk about an under-resourced school, right? You look at school budgets, you look at a bloated system, right? We still have an industrialized education system. But those teachers that really swam against, the tide, really, really gave their hearts to their kids. Man, I'll never forget those teachers. And that's why I'm also a big believer in education. I'll never forget it. There was a teacher against all odds who just pushed to put me in the debate club. And I was like, please, Jesus, I don't want to do this. I was super shy.
Yeah.
And it was one of the best experiences because, civic engagement has gone out the window. So I participated in the debate team. She put me in this writing program. Mind you, this is where poverty eventually gets in the way, right? I go to this fancy writing program with actually adults who want to be novelists because she really thought I was a good writer. I don't know why. My punctuation and grammar were so off, but I was very creative. So I go to this writing program and I just didn't feel like I belonged. I was the only ethnic kid there. I was the youngest, right? And this is why it's so important to model, to have people that look like you, or to have enough to see those, right? Doing those things that you think you can't do, or that room is not for you. And that's why I'm a big believer in that, in mentoring as well. And so I pulled myself out of the program, and now I look back and I'm like, what an idiot, how could I shortchange myself that way? But this is the way too that poverty impacts you,
Wait, so you left that writer program just because you felt like you didn't belong?
I felt like an imposter. And I think also girls have a lot of that. I think as girls, we really, and I would dare say women, right? When we look also studies, Harvard did a huge study on also women in the leadership track. Mm-hmm. And most of us, I think there was that big data, it's been probably oversighted, right? When a woman applies for a job, even though she's 90% qualified or 80% qualified, she won't apply, whereas a man is barely 40% or 60% qualified. And he's like, I'm overqualified. Yeah. And they go in as applicants. And so, we question ourselves. And then I think you add, poverty or trauma to it. It's not you, right? Because someone could say, here's this program, right? This opportunity was presented to you, but you failed to make a good decision. But we also have to look at those brains, especially when you're young and you do have a flight and flee,
Fight.
Sorry, I should never say. I'm really bad with American colloquialisms. I should put an end to it. But
we know what you mean.
You're on survival mode. You're on survival mode. Me and my family, my sisters were known for butchering any American saying. I don't know why we insist on giving you American sayings
when
we
can
participate. Yeah, we'll get it wrong.
Let's take it the other way. What about Americans? America going with Latinx. What do you guys feel about that? The category.
I think we're going to agree on this one. What do you feel
Maria,
about Latinx?
Maria Jose, what kind of Mexican are you?
I'm not a Mexican. I'm actually the other side. It's interesting because I hear her story, right? Two Ecuadorian immigrants, two women, successful, I think, in our own right right now. I think I love my job. I have the best job at MGM, by the way, and I work with the most amazing group of women.
Do you have Ecuadorian heritage? Is that what you're saying?
My mother's Ecuadorian, my dad's Argentinian. I moved to the States when I was 15. Yeah. So English is my second language. So I try to stay away from any saying that I can.
She's smarter than I am. I insist that I'm going to get them right.
We just had this conversation in the car with her husband.
Like, yeah, I just got it wrong again. He corrected me. He was like, "Can you please abandon them?" I'll decide to. And I decided to embarrass myself on a public
the
podcast.
Panama Canal was not built in a day.
But it's
no, Rome's not
built
in a day.
It's Rome, not the Panama Canal.
Panama hats are built in a day. They're Ecuadorian, by the way.
And
they're not Panama hats, but they're really Ecuadorian. Yeah,
I know. But it's the same. It's it's two girls. My mother's family comes from money as well, right? Well educated, and you moved here. My parents didn't move for any other reason that my dad was a professional soccer player.
Ah, excellent. Yeah.
And retired by age 35, and said, "Hey, we have family in the States. Let's move." And they came, worked really hard, and raised 3 children, right? And I remember being
Did you come directly to Vegas or somewhere else?
Directly to Vegas. This
Okay.
is home. So when people tell me where I'm from, I'm from Las Vegas. I've spent most of my
Yeah.
life here, but a completely different experience, right? I have this most amazing parents. I knew English was going to be my second language. I knew I was not going to eat nachos the entire year because I couldn't say hamburger. It's just like, that's hard to say when English is your second language.
Wait, so you're saying when you went out, you could only order nachos?
Yeah, because it's easy. See, nachos sounds really Latino, right? If you're trying to say hamburger and you're trying to all the R's, it's like, shoot. Hamburger. Write it A-J. You should just sound it out.
Yeah, that's true because there are J's in our H, right? The American versus
So
the
it's
way
like,
Latino.
okay, let's make my life easier.
It's a good thing charcuterie was not an option.
Oh my God, charcuterie! I still can't look. I can't say it.
I can't say it either. So
I can't say it. Can I just say cold cuts?
Cheese and
not
meat
fancy,
plate,
then.
please. I like those.
Cheese plate, yes.
But it's the same upbringing, right? I went to private school growing up, public school here.
Yeah.
I never felt discriminated though.
Oh, okay.
And so we came from. I used to tell people, and people didn't believe me because once in school, someone asked me because I was from Ecuador if I lived on top of the trees. And I said, okay, I'm not sure what this means. It's my second year here in the States. Maybe English. I've lost something in translation.
Right.
And I said, like Tarzan? He goes, yeah. I'm like, no. Okay. I had a nanny and a maid. My underwear used to get pressed. I mean, it's like an Ecuadorian thing. I don't know what
it is. You do.
But
You
but
iron
they do.
iron.
And
Yeah,
so, but
iron your underwear.
You don't want wrinkly drawers.
yeah, no,
You
you.
don't. No wrinkly drawers.
So I have stories
How
to
you
tell
take
about
Dress
that.
for Success to the next level.
Yes, I will.
Like you press underwear.
Maria Jose, I need to be funded so that we can iron.
I don't know that I can
dress
push through funding for what for someone to press underwear. Yeah,
I feel like
that's
we
not going to
finally
fly.
struck gold in this conversation. We've been digging.
Yeah, exactly. But what I saw, I didn't see discrimination. I never felt less. I knew English was going to be my second language, but I was determined not to be a statistic. I also should say that I got pregnant very young. I had my son when I was 20.
Oh, wow.
So I was very close to become this Latina statistic
That's
of
not
gets
very
here.
young in the U.S., right? In the U.S., like high school is very young.
Well, it's very young in the Latino traditional home.
Okay.
You have to tell your mom and your dad.
Well, if
and
you're not
everybody else.
married,
You're
yeah.
not married. And I
if
didn't
you're
get
not
married. And the best thing that ever happened to me was having my son. Now he's 24 and I'm like 25.
Yay.
Yeah. Wow.
We have a couple of history majors in the house here.
She's 25. I'm 85.
Part of it was what I didn't like that I saw was this ability for people to stand in front of a group and try to represent what we needed as Hispanics, as Asians. My ESL class had a combination of Mexicans, Colombians, Ecuadorian, Koreans, Taiwanese.
So are you going back to Liem's Latinx question? Is do you feel that
I don't.
you don't feel that that's a useful
No.
categorization?
No.
I want to know who
Yeah.
came up with the term
White
Latinx.
people.
I don't think it was. I don't think there's buy-in in the community.
White motherfuckers.
I will challenge you. Listen
Sorry.
to. There's a very funny podcast by two
Yeah.
Dominican women, and they have a whole conversation, and it's fantastic. It's one of the best about Latinx, and I mean, it's with a lot of humor, right?
Yeah.
And like, how did that come out? Now, the thing that
Can we
I
put a link
do,
in the
What's the name of it?
I have to look it up.
You send it,
Listen,
we'll put a
I'm
link in it.
85. Memory goes out the window. Just listen. You're lucky that I remember the word Dominican and Latinas. I mean, that's. But very dynamic, younger women, and they make a lot of jokes about it because there isn't a community buy-in, and it's not just our generation because they're younger than I am.
Yeah.
I think what's important that we all appreciate. I don't know how you feel, but the only thing that I like about Latinx, I can't even say
Latinx.
Latinx. It doesn't even like.
It's so
Latinx.
terrible. I can't even
Yeah,
say
I
it.
can't even. Yeah, I don't. And it's so just not ingrained. I don't know. It's not something the way I've ever identified, or there's a buy-in with.
Yeah.
That I also don't know anyone that's my friend that's Latina or Latino that uses it. So and younger cousins, my nieces.
Yeah.
don't use it.
So knock it off, white people.
So I don't know, but I think what I do like the intention of the X is that which we struggle as a community. I think we can speak about it, right? It's knowing the inclusion of diversity in sexuality, right? Or in how you identify non-binary. You know, we struggle with this in the Latino community.
I didn't get any of that out of the Latinx.
So it's the inclusion. That's the piece that we do miss as a culture, right? The other, right?
Are you saying Latino cultures tend to be very machismo? Is that what you're kind of saying?
I think
no?
there's something fascinating when they say machismo, because I'm going to challenge you with this one, okay? So supposedly we are the sexist, right, country that's behind, like the region, right? Yet we've had female presidents in the Latin American region.
Yeah.
I challenge you.
Yeah.
We did not have the issue when you had a female, right, run. We didn't do that type of, I'm going to butcher the word, misogyny. Misogyny that, you know, Hillary Clinton, where you were a fan or not. I mean, some of the things, I was shocked. It was shocking. So,
things that people said.
Just the unfair process. I mean, it was such an undignified process. Whoever's running for office, you know, it was the sexism behind it, right? The sense of judgment, the things that, you know, that she was criticized. And we also see it in with race, with Obama too, whether you liked his presidency. Listen, I have a lot of issues. You know, listen, as far as his immigration policy, I have a lot of issues. But I think the way he was judged in New York, we experienced it with David Dinkins, where he was told that he dressed too fancy because he wore suits. And he, at one point, got so pissed off. He said in a radio interview, he was like, would you be more comfortable if I am picking cotton, wearing overalls in a farm? Would that make you more comfortable? You know, and so the way I think we hold some people accountable, it's so clear, the bias, right? The outright, where you can even say it's a microaggression, right? It was a dirty, dirty race.
Yeah.
I think the things that happen, listen, I don't have to be a Democrat, you know, to see that. So I do have a point of issue when people say, you know, Latin America and Latin American men and machismo. There is sexism. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think traditional cultures, we probably struggle with understanding gender fluidity more, probably. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. But then I go to places like Thailand that are considered to be traditional, maybe because it's Buddhist, right? It's a philosophy, different the way you see the world, where I could be in a place in Thailand where people, you know, super traditional farmers, and there was somebody that was non-gender, you know, self-identifying binary, and they may not know, but I think that's the Buddhist philosophy, right? You don't have to have the answers. You don't have to have a label. Let it just be.
Well, so I did my high school years in Thailand, so I know a little bit about Thai culture. I think the way they say it is like, you know, whatever you want to be. You know, there's no.
Tony's mom doesn't understand. I mean, she still struggles with what term, you know, how to identify. I mean, we had a funny dinner, like homosexual, like, you know, but she doesn't care. It's not a prolonged conversation.
Wait, you had a gay dinner with your mom?
We had some gay friends over at dinner. And the funniest thing is that they kept thinking the other person who was super hyper heterosexual was the gay person, and the gay person they identified, you know, as super hyper heterosexual. So when the dinner was over, we're like, no, it was the older gentleman that was homosexual. Not that it doesn't matter, right? But it didn't matter to them either. So like I said, maybe they're more, you know, she was more old school or traditional and not necessarily know what to give it a name. But she didn't ponder on it or what it meant, or could that person come over and have dinner with her? It's like you said, let it be. So some things you may not understand, or you haven't walked in that person's shoe. You may not have the answers, but you let it be. And I think with the other traditional cultures, I think in Latin America, where we struggle is that we want to find definition, right?
And also that there's a very big religious mentality, right? So
it's part of the culture.
It's part of the culture, correct? So you're very Catholic or Christian at this point, but very Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
And
Ecuador still traditionally very Catholic.
So the gender fluidity doesn't really meet.
It does not exist.
It doesn't
in the
exist.
Jesus
It
Bible.
doesn't. So I think it's harder for them to transition. I don't think it has anything to do with machismo. It's this belief of what's good and what's bad, what's a sin and what's not, what's evil and what's good. So I think that's the big difference, right?
Does Ecuador respond to the leadership of the Pope? Is that so? Or is that a different?
So in other words, Ecuador is secular, right? So its government is separated from religion. But a big percentage, and you're right, it's changing. The demographic, it's primarily Christian. And within the Christian religions, Catholicism is one of the biggest religion, I would say. But now, like other Christian groups like Pentecostals have taken.
There's also a huge influx of Muslims coming in.
Muslims are coming to Ecuador?
Yeah, I was surprised last time I was there. And my
Why
cousin,
is this happening? I'm curious.
Well, we've always had a Lebanese migration. I mean, Turkish
Yeah,
Lebanese,
mostly
always in Ecuador.
on the
Some
coast.
of the wealthy families are Lebanese in Ecuador.
I think it's what you see, this new world, right? So
Yeah.
we
Global
love to see
migration.
this world as segmented, but we're not. I mean,
Right.
look at us here.
Yeah.
She's got a super blended family. I have a family that I have cousins that live in Paris, in Latin America, everywhere, right?
Yeah.
We're sitting here, and we probably have different backgrounds. So this is the world that we live in today. The sooner we understand that we, instead of coming up with cute names to segment us, Latinx, and we start talking about what we all have in common,
Yes.
then we will be a better place. Then the work that Norma does and the work that I try to do in supporting, I don't care. I usually tell people we have a strong diversity department at MGM Resorts because it's needed. Unfortunately, in the 21st century in the U.S., we need to talk about it, right?
Yeah.
But from my point of view, I don't care if you're pink, purple, polka dot, striped.
Yeah.
I don't care. If you need assistance, male, female, gender fluid, I don't care what you are, we should be able to work with each other to make progress, to grow.
Yeah.
And we're not there. So the work is always going to be needed. I don't want to look at someone and say, oh, I'm here with this Asian guy. What does that mean?
Right.
Right?
With this Asian singular point of view. No, I mean, listen, there's diversity of thought. Everyone has experience. And so you want that. But also the fact that if someone has the acumen, the potential, I'm going to harness that potential. I'm not going to care. You're right. If they're polka dot, I don't care about that. And also different ideas. I always tell this when I hire employees, I say, I want you to want my job. I want you to exceed me. I'm a good leader, right?
Yeah.
If I hire just someone like me, it's not going to make me an effective leader. I hire to my weaknesses too. I look to hire people. I surround myself with people that are smarter than me. I want that even in my friendships. I want you to challenge me. One of the best teams that I had, I used to, forgive me, Dan, and I'll give his name. But I worked with
going
this
under the bus.
amazing copywriter. His name was Dan. And we used to say that Dan was the president of the Bureau of Crankiness. Very, very cranky, man. Very, very cranky.
Yes.
And in a lot of ways, Dan and I were very different, as we were similar. But let me tell you, Dan made my work better because I knew that when I was coming in, right, I worked for an international organization and we had to fundraise millions and millions of dollars. And so when I would build my direct mail campaigns, just like a marketing campaign, right, we have a campaign.
Right.
I'm not selling products and goods. I'm actually trying to get funding for a crisis. In this case, it was the Syrian crisis, a huge humanitarian crisis.
Was this a different organization?
Different
Okay,
organization.
gotcha, yeah.
And so he would always challenge me. I thought I had the campaign pinned down, and I would have my meeting with my team, right? My copywriter, the creative person, my direct mail manager, and I said, okay, this is the campaign that we work at least 3 months out minimum on a campaign, and this is what we're going to tackle, and these are the funds we're going to raise. It's going to be for this group or for this, whether it was a mother and child clinic, a children program, whatever it was, refugee assistance, migrant assistance, and this is the way we're going to communicate it. And I think this is the angle that we should do. This is the heartstrings where we're going to pull. There was always Dan. I would cross eyes and, Dan, what is it? He looked like absolutely miserable with the theme of the campaign, but he made me better, and it was a back and forth. Oftentimes, I hope, Dan, I hope that I made him better because he caved in and we went with my campaign and it raised chunks of money. But honestly,
Fuck you,
the
Dan.
years, no. And the same thing with Dan. When I was wrong,
Too far.
there was one where he challenged me and I was very, very strong. I just felt like, no, that's the wrong way to go, Dan. And,
Yeah.
and it took a bit. And he was right. And it was one of the most successful appeals we've had. And so you want people to challenge you. You want diversity of thought. And, you know, and like I said, on the outside, Dan and I look like polar opposites, right? If you're going to judge by physicality or even experiences where we lived, how we grew up. And in some ways, yes, we were similar. But that added to my team. If I hired someone like me, we would have, together, that team, it's the most successful fundraising team that I've had, because it was I had that diversity, and I had diversity in a copywriter, and I think that that's important, right? You know, you want
different
those
strengths
to challenge
on your
you.
team.
Absolutely.
You also have to be careful with reverse discrimination, okay? Because we talk about diversity and we only want to see color, or now gender, right? What are you, male, female, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
But there's such thing as reverse discrimination. And I say this because in my world, as a Latina immigrant trying to learn her way around and get a career and get an education, some of the best people in my life, my best mentors, the people that were invested in my growth were white males.
Yeah.
We're the people that open doors. So when I talk about diversity, I said, that's why I have the saying that I don't care if you're purple, pink, polka dot, I don't care. We belong to the same, exactly. We belong to the same ecosystem, right? So if we belong to the same ecosystem, we should be able to respect each other, because the white male also comes with an idea, also comes with a vision and an experience. I remember I was the youngest director running programs for the Culinary Academy here in Las Vegas. At that time I was 24, 25, and people would have conversations with me, executives over the phone, and they were totally fine. But when I would walk into a meeting with one of them, they will be disappointed because they saw this kid, right? This young woman. And I used to take offense to it, right? So it's like, what am I doing wrong? And I remember this amazing guy, my mentor, who's no longer with us, George Cease was his name, the best person I've ever worked for. And another gentleman that also I worked for, one of our presidents for MGM, Felix Rappaport. Both of them at different points in my career said, we have plenty of men in the boardroom. We have plenty of men sitting around giving their opinion. I don't need you to think like one. I need you to think like Maria Jose.
Yeah.
I need you to bring you in.
That's
because if you want to act like a white man, that's my job, not yours. And you need to get me out of my job. And it's, again, let's be careful with reverse discrimination, because we need everyone in order to function, and we need their experiences. And it is men like them that open doors for minorities, right? Because the struggle of minorities has been known since biblical times, right? And so
they're always picking on the Moses people.
They're picking on someone throughout history. But it is people that were on top of the food chain at some point that saw something wrong, that decided to make a change and fix it. And we have to acknowledge that and respect that.
Right.
And so you can't go too far on one side or the other when we talk about diversity. We need to talk about respect. Respect for human life, period, for conditions, for access, for the ability to provide what everyone needs: food, shelter, education, mental health, medical health, regardless of whether you have 2 eyes, 3 eyes, or 5 feet. I don't care.
And I would like to add that Dan was an older white gentleman.
I knew that.
So, yes. And here is this, Ecuadorian woman. So that's what I mean. It's diversity also in age. I had lots of young kids, far younger than I, as I did, older teammates. And I think that once again, you bring, and also it was his career path, different expertise. One of the things that I love that was very non-traditional in his resume is that he was an avid into anthropology and archaeology. I mean, I really didn't need that as a copywriter, but that sure as hell made him more interesting, when he wasn't being cranky. But, but that's what I mean. It's what you bring into the table, right? So we talked about diversity of age, of thought, but one thing that you touched upon, right? Like, I don't think it's so much reverse discrimination, which really breaks my heart. And I think, we've had conversations, certainly I've had it with many of my girlfriends, is when there's so few of us, right, that we have to compete with each other. It happens with women, right? It happens with Latinos, with African Americans, with Asians, right? Or one group against the other, right? When we're pinned against each other, right? Because we think that, if I push you out of the way, then I'm going to be that, that person that gets in the room. And we can't be the only ones in the room. And we can't pin ourselves against each other.
Yeah, I have to do that with lots of really good-looking model men. Like I want to be the best-looking dude, so I gotta sabotage them. And
I see it.
Yeah,
I see it. I see it.
It's not
we
easy.
feel the same way about 5'8" women.
Right, that's me. Yeah,
5'6".
sure,
We understand that.
Yeah, I don't get confused for a footstool, not at all.
I think there is gender discrimination still, right? So you can, and I had this conversation about a year and a half ago with someone. If a woman if I come into a meeting and I argue, or not argue, but I argue your point because it doesn't make any sense, then they call me emotional. She's got to be emotional. If a man comes back into the same meeting, gives the same speech, argues with the same person, they give him, instead of calling him emotional or hormonal, he's got strong views.
So
We had a talk with a psychologist, Renee.
yeah.
She said almost word for word the same exact thing that you said.
Yeah.
It happens ongoingly. We
So-
experience that so much.
And then there's the discrimination for women. Well, we don't necessarily want, I've heard men say, well, we don't really want to hire women because they're emotional. What is that supposed to mean, right? It's not emotional. It's either we love what we do and we all have opinions.
Yeah.
And-
You both seem very professional, so I can't imagine.
Listen, you have no idea. I would be a millionaire all the times that I've been told to smile, right? Or all the times that I've been told that, where I don't think a man, to be a strong leader, has to be told that I have to be nice. We women have to be nice, right? If we're assertive or we have a point of view or a vision, right? Because certainly in philanthropy, right, I have to be very tenacious. That international organization that I work for, right? I took it from 22 million to 35 million at a time where there was lots of anti-immigration sentiment. And I'm fundraising for the Middle East. In a very difficult time. I had to deal with the Iraqi-Syria crisis.
Wow.
I had to deal with the famine in Ethiopia, and, you would think that, you would understand that requires strong leadership. But oftentimes it's not, right? It's a B word, or you're not assertive, or you're right. You're relegated to being emotional, right? Especially when you're dealing with a cause, when people's lives literally are at stake, when people are fleeing because they're going to get killed, executed, right? You damn Skippy, I'm going to move with a sense of urgency. Absolutely. But if it's a woman, it's seen different. Like our contributions are seen different. If I fire someone, it's completely, different than if a man fires someone, if I terminate someone, if I make a business decision. I was at a conference room. This was probably the most disheartening, right? And it was another female executive and we disagreed. We had a disagreement and that's okay. We can part ways as business partners and just disagree. You know what my CEO said? He said, why don't you ladies go out and have a cup of coffee? Because it's just, like cat fight. I think it's what people, I don't know. Or, maybe you're all bitchy. Maybe you just need to have some tea and simmer on down, and so okay, we're going to see things through different perspectives as well. And that's okay. And like I said,
you want the jasmine tea. That's the
the jasmine. That would
I would have said lavender tea at that point if there's
and then,
a
worse yet, if you're Latina or you're a black woman, you know how aggressive you're seen. I've had these conversations. I had another woman, a colleague, and we were running so I'm head of fundraising. She is in charge of digital marketing, right? And we're trying to do this International Women's Campaign we're running, and we each have a very strong point of view, and we're trying to move the campaign along. And the way we're sitting with a bunch of men in the room, right? The way the campaign is being perceived, or the way we're perceived, right? It's very, very aggressive. It's like you really have to, and I hate like that we had to go to a sidebar and say, listen, our strategy is going to be such that we're going to make the men think that this is their idea, right? And sometimes you have to do that to make wins, and it sucks. You feel like so gross,
Did it
but
work?
it did work. I mean, they were so very pleased with themselves.
But I should clarify that the two of us are mothers of boys.
Yeah.
So as much as I love empowerment, and I go back and I sound like a broken record, it is about
It starts with men.
empowerment
Starts with
of a
boys.
community,
Yeah.
of people, regardless of, we want to break the gender inequality. Okay, we want to get to the
You wanna
21st
not
century.
treat people differently for
Regardless.
regardless.
But also boys have to see girls as less than, right? So one of the things that we're very intentional with our son, with Alejandro, right? And I've always said it. If we only talk about, you hit on something really, really key. If we say that gender inequity is only a woman's issue, we're never going to solve it, right?
Right.
If I say that rape is a woman's issue or sexual violence is a woman's issue and we're never addressing the perpetrator, which about 99.9% it's men, right? I'm not saying that there isn't violence with women, and yes, certainly there have been cases, but the majority, right, most crimes of violence committed against women and children are male, the perpetrators are male. And so if we say that that's a woman's issue and we're not addressing the men, we're not addressing the issue too. There's a lot of toxic masculinity, right? If I want girl power for my nieces, that means that my son, right, has to also, his paradigm has to shift, right? How I raise him. If I raise him as an entitled boy, right, that discredits girls or doesn't humanize girls, right, or girls are only to flirt with, and if you like a girl, pull her hair, right, that's boys are taught to get attention, right? But
Does that work?
Yeah, it works. It's really, really cute. Love it. Don't worry.
All
that
this time, I could have.
Yeah.
Could have been the most popular guy in school.
Been the most, yeah, and if you got slapped back, it just meant she loves you right back. Yeah.
Damn it.
So, my kid has had female best friends as he's had boy's best friend, right? That's huge. He sees his mom and his dad do everything in the household, and there are things that Tony excels in that can be seen as domestic, or that I excel in that can be seen as masculine space. But for him, that's not going to exist. Or things that I do well that can be seen traditionally, that I do well, Tony still can beat me with my roast chicken.
Tony is in the studio. he's writing a long list right now of things that he does better.
So, it's to Alejandro, it's one of the things that we teach him, and I love it because his grandfather, being an army man, taught him that, he was like, I'm going to teach you to be self-sufficient. Tony grew up that way, and I think that's why he's teaching Alejandro to be this way. You're not going to depend on anyone, whether it's a woman or a man. You're not going to go hungry because you're going to wait for your girlfriend to make you a sandwich or whatever.
Or your mommy.
Or you're going to learn how to dial, or you're going to have enough money to order food, but you're going to take care of yourself. And so we're raising, we have to raise boys in the same way, right? We're never going to address gender equity, right? Or girls are not going to be in power if boys are also, they're not part of the conversation. Men too. Men are allies, right? The same thing with if you want to be an ally of a Latina, of the African American community, the Asian community, well, you have to show up, right? And you have to give them the voice, the platform, right? And it's the same thing for women. Men have to show up. We have to teach you how to be allies.
You don't have to be one of to stand with, right? You just got to make the right choice of what to stand for and with.
Yes.
And that's regardless of gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation,
right.
What you believe. Because honestly, I was born a Catholic. Now, if you believe in the good old shoe, God, knock yourself out. As long as you're respectful, as long as you respect boundaries, as long as you respect my belief system. I have a very Catholic grandmother, like a very, very, very Catholic grandmother, right? 6 a.m. church days.
Rosary beads.
Yes, right. And even though she's very traditional, she was the first person to tell me, you don't have to get married just because you're pregnant. What you do have to do is raise a child in the Catholic faith, right? But
Okay.
the best way possible. But you go back and say, you can break the rules to make the world a better place. Because otherwise, at age 20, they could have forced me to get married, right? Peer
Right.
pressure, and just end up divorced, 3 years later? She didn't. So the lessons in life, I think, and the thing we miss, and the reason why we're employed is because people don't accept people. You asked earlier, what was our biggest enemy?
Yeah.
Shame.
Oh, shame, yeah.
Yeah.
Shame is the biggest enemy we have,
Yeah.
right? Shame to be who you are.
Yeah.
Shame to
love who you love. Yeah.
to speak the language that you
Yeah.
do. I mean, I know this really two amazing people, and I'm a first generation immigrant. I didn't know why Mexican Americans of certain generation didn't speak the language.
Right.
Like, how can you grow up in a Mexican household with your grandmother being Mexican? You don't speak the language.
Yeah.
And when you learn the Chicano history, the civil rights, you realize that as blacks were fighting for rights, so were Mexican Americans in the South, right? And they were shamed because they spoke a different language.
Yeah.
So their families turned around in an effort to protect children and decided that English was going to be the language. No shame in that. Their last name is still Hernandez, right?
Yeah.
It's still the same, but it's the lack of acceptance. Therefore, we continue to have social services available because there's shame. Shame comes with an array of other difficulties, right? Poverty, hunger, inequality, health, mental issues, because you're ashamed. You know, if you take human trafficking, right? July 30th is the day against, it's the awareness day for anti-human trafficking efforts. And you go back and think, women that have been, or women and men, because they assume it's just a women's issue. It is not a women's issue. It's a women and men, boys and girls. They don't have to be adults. That's who experience that. They feel
but if somebody takes your sister, then
correct.
That's your problem too, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
The shame that comes with them. So it's harder for them to rebuild their lives because they feel shame. They feel that people won't see them the same way. And you talk to them and they tell you this, and then you hear great stories of women and men that have pushed forward, right?
Yeah.
And their mission today is to protect others. And you go back and say, there is no shame in what you lived. It was just necessary at the time. There is shame if you learn nothing from it and you don't pay it forward.
Right. Yeah, I think shame, it's really, really powerful because shame can really hold us back and it can really break that human spirit. And I think you're right. I see shame in poverty.
That's all the difference in getting dressed up for an interview, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's that feeling less than, right? So when you get dressed up, when you deem yourself worthy, right? But also shame can really, really stop your growth. Right. And like I said, shame comes in different ways, but certainly someone, I think that's why also we changed the word. And this is not just a buzzword, but when we say that, so that you're a survivor, right? Versus a victim, right? And even though you have been victimized, it's taking your power back because that shame can eat away at you. That shame causes suicide, right? That shame causes depression. That shame causes self-loathing. And yeah, shame can kill us as a society, right? That it doesn't allow us, whether it's discrimination because of language, who we love, who we are and the experiences that we've survived, that can really destroy us. So I like
shame is one of those things that it's everywhere, right? If you're too fat, it's a shameful thing because you don't fit the mold of who you need to be today. If you're too skinny, it's shameful too because then you need to gain some weight. If you're too tall, if you're too short, if you're dark, if you're this, if you're that, shame is at the root of every social issue, right? Because if we actually owned up to our mistakes, our decisions, and we push forward and try to make the best out of it without shame, saying, hey, I fell down, I scraped my knees, let me just dust them off and continue to move on. I'll have a scab for a few minutes. It'll remind me. But I'm not going to make the same mistake. Then the world will be a different place.
Or shame of mental health as well. That's a huge one here. And we tackle that a lot in Nevada, right? We don't have enough providers. If you get to the rurals, right? You've seen also depression in children, right? Now younger, higher suicide rates in children. So yeah, shame if we don't address it, right? And to see that mental health is healthcare, right? In the same way that you wouldn't be ashamed if you broke your arm. The same thing with women who, or men or children or boys who've been victims of violence, right? The fact that they're survivors, right? But we're ashamed, right? Someone runs you over. There shouldn't be shame in that. You get run over by a car. And it's the same thing, the healthcare, the mental health. But yeah, that is really powerful that you said, because shame really prevents us from moving forward and it negates our humanity.
Someone wants to get involved in helping your organization or your program, what's the best way on, I think separately on both of you, how would someone get involved and contact you, or what should they do to help out?
Yeah, so there's so many ways that you can get involved. You can certainly volunteer. You can volunteer to be a stylist. You can volunteer to be a career coach. You can volunteer to be a mentor. We're trying to implement these things because of the pandemic, and we're not trending in the right direction. We can start doing sisterhood check-ins. So for the women that come, that receive our services, right, to check in on them. Sometimes they just need that human contact. That's really, really critical. So there's so many ways to activate, get involved. You can also make those in-kind donations. We like scrubs. A lot of people forget the trades as a profession, and that can be very high-paying professions for women, right? And also we look at non-traditional industries. We just partnered with Women in Security, and we were able to take some of our clients where they were able to job shadow women and participate in the trade show. There was an amazing talk by a famous race car driver. And so there are industries that are non-traditional, right? Where maybe a woman needs construction boots, or as an electrician, we don't get those clothes donated, like scrubs for frontline workers, uniforms. Someone can be, driving a tractor, and that pays really well for a woman, right? There are many non-traditional career paths that we don't consider. There isn't a space that a woman doesn't belong in, and so I would say, yeah, you can make those in-kind donations. We lack a lot of garments. We are lacking also planners. We would love to have planners for a woman when we include cards of, why are you laughing at me?
Do you mean like a calendar planner?
That's exactly what I was going to ask. You mean
Oh.
like the paper thing you
Or
carry?
somebody to be a
like
planner.
a planner, like a journaling planner, like 2009, and you put your calendar, but also your goals. They're called
Nice.
planners.
Yeah.
They're called planners.
They
We have
still
an
have
Amazon
them
wish
around, I
list.
guess. I just
Don't
assume
make
everything
fun
goes
of
in the
my
phone.
English.
So you need people to donate that? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so you can volunteer, you can donate in-kind donations, you can make a monetary gift, because that allows me to innovate my programming, right? Let's say we have to start restricting again, right? How am I going to get my programs and services? Or maybe I need to invest in programs that I currently don't have, right? The mission is never going to change, right? But the way that we help women based on the need that they're facing, on the challenges and the barriers we need to remove. So donations, you can become a member of our Little Black Dress Club, gentlemen too. I'm gonna have to add the bow tie club.
Is it
and
weird
it starts $25 a month. I mean, those small gifts are really what keeps our doors open, because that's unrestricted funding. So when my partners, right, also have to shutter because of the pandemic, right, or they're not getting revenue, right, or we can't do events, right, and the revenue is not coming in that way, that $25 monthly donation is really what sustains a lot of nonprofits. So there are many, many ways to give, get involved, in-kind, outright gifts, and volunteering.
Is it weird if we donate a ton of bras every month?
No, I need a retail. So if there's a retailer that's listening out to me, come on, Vanity Fair, where are you? Or all those bra partners that I need, plus size. When you talked about, once again, the way we see ideal
Large
size.
bras, yeah.
Well, in clothing and everything. Another thing is that we still, the fashion industry, right? When we look at clothing, oftentimes the really beautiful clothing is not plus size, right? And also what we see as the average size of a woman. I mean, our clients tell us our donors, when we say we need plus size, they'll say, oh, you need a size 13 or 14. And I'm like, no, that's the average size woman. So when I need a plus size, I'm saying 2XL, 3XL, 5XL, because we have this weird mindset of what we think, right? Because we churn out what we see visually, what's fed to us on TV, right? This very stereotypical image of beauty, and particularly for women, the way we're judged, right? How we're supposed to look, all those things that you said, the size that we're supposed to be. And that can really get in the way when you don't think about professional attire, when you can't find the right clothing, not only because you lack the funds or the dollars, but you can't even find attire in your size, or you go somewhere that a lot of our women have told us, we're made to feel shameful when we go there. We have to go to the special department, right? And it's awful. It makes them feel less than. And something as simple as that can really prevent a woman from saying, hey, I belong in that job. I can go and interview for that job. So when we dress a woman, we're not, I know it's going to sound so corny, we're not just dressing her on the inside, we're dressing her on the outside, and then addressing all those barriers that can get in the way for her success, in the way of her success.
Great.
Yeah.
So if you're an MGM Resort employee, I will encourage you to become a volunteer. We have a wonderful volunteer program with rewards, nonprofit. They can actually earn points and make a donation at the end. The company will make a donation to the charity of their choice once they log their hours. So it's a way to give back. It's our commitment, again, to continue to engage employees. organizations like Norma, Three Square, Catholic Charities, they're always looking for volunteers, people that can help them provide the services or be the human touch that they need. So if you're an employee, definitely join the forces of volunteering. If you're a person out there with a passion for something and you want to make an impact, don't forget to write that check, because that helps nonprofits. Grants are restricted dollars. Grants are meant to cover certain program aspects of their mission, but not everything. Just like the joke of the printer, right? Something as simple as a $200 or $300 printer was a luxury for a nonprofit, right? And they depend on the ability to print their flyers to communicate with their I'm going to call them customers, because the people they serve are their customers.
Right.
The $25 donation, I tell nonprofits, make sure that when you have volunteer opportunities, your volunteers are wowed by the mission and the work you do, because that will turn into a donor forever. I started making donations years ago to an organization, and I have never stopped. I don't even question it. I know it's going, right? Because I know they're doing really great work. If anything else, I've increased. So if you have a passion, just don't talk about it, do something about it, right? You can't change the world by sitting there and saying, and looking at everything that's wrong and bringing shame to others. The way we change the world is by really sticking together and doing two things: volunteering and giving. And giving is a big part of how we survive.
Yeah. And I would say too, when you think of making those donations, right, don't discredit the small gifts, but also when you steward your dollars, and, you know, I also give to charities. I have those cross-cutting issues or causes that I really care about. And, you know, I pick them because I can give to all charities, right? I don't only just even contribute, to my own organization. But I say pick 5 or pick 3, right? Give to multiple, but then choose those that you give to, because, if you're giving to 200 charities and just sending them $1 each, just think about the manpower that it takes to process that dollar. So, also be smart in your giving, the cross-cutting issues, the problems that you want to solve. Look at the impact that the charity is having, and align yourself. And definitely giving of your time, talents, and resources. All of it matters. And then 2, solve local problems. I think even overseas, right? I'll tell you one thing. So one of the times I traveled overseas, I traveled to Ethiopia, and I was super excited. I had never been to Ethiopia. And it was the organization that I work with. I supported a program, their children's program, right? So there were children that were in orphanages. And I was going to have the opportunity to meet some of the children that I supported through that orphanage. And then me being in the sector, I did the same stupid things that I tell people not to do, right? I go out and I buy a bunch of coloring books, just stupid shit, right? That my heart gets the best of me. And I don't know, I reacted impulsively.
Why is it bad to give
And
them
I'll tell you why.
Okay.
And also why money means so much, why dollars matter so much to charities. So then I go there, and I think, just like an outsider. I don't even take into account the local community. And then when I arrived to Addis Ababa, one of the first things I saw was a woman in a market selling something similar that I had bought, right? Or not understanding even that she was selling rubber shoes that looked like had the imprint of sneakers, because there's so many children that are barefoot, right? And I know this. I work in this region. I knew the issues, but I got swayed with my own emotions, right? Bought dollars instead of stimulating the local economy. What I should have gone to this woman, right? Helped an enterprising woman, right? Selling goods, helped her family, and then given a gift to that child if I wanted to. But once again, I wasn't looking through the local lenses. So that's what I mean. I'm not saying that you don't donate to international organizations, but then you take into account that local community, right? You stimulate the local economy, right? So don't just take things overseas, or even when you do in-kind, the best way to do in-kind is to do it locally, because what you pay in VAT taxes, in returning that, you're taking away that possibility, right? I could have done so much more, man. I wanted to kick myself. I was like, what an imbecile, right? And here I am. I'm in the sector. I know better. But sometimes, that's what I say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. When you have a good intention, whether it's to start a nonprofit that may not be needed, divorce yourself from the ego. It's about making an impact. The same thing when you want to help. Think about, how can I best help? Which is the best way? And also trust charities that they know what they're doing, right? I should have gone to my programs person and said, hey, I'm traveling. What is it that the children need? What's the best way for me to, I could have invested in, our microloan program. It was just really dumb. I was impulsive, right? I was moved. Sure, it was a good impulse, but it didn't have a lot of impact. It took away, if anything.
Wait, so did you look at those coloring books and see where they were printed?
The coloring books where they were printed? I don't
Is that the
remember.
idea that instead of supporting that local economy, you bought the books from Vietnam or something?
No, it's just that I bought something here in the U.S. with dollars.
Yeah.
In other words, my dollar could have gone further. I could have given someone locally, but I'm visiting that country and I could have stimulated the local economy in the country
Had you
that
not
I'm
spent the money
visiting.
here.
Right?
Gotcha.
I didn't have that sensitivity. I was looking at it through the lens of a foreigner.
Yeah.
Right? So when we travel, just be conscious of where we're traveling. Try to really, sort of shut up, let go of your own, preconceived notions, and then also respect and be open to the culture and seeing how you can best help. It's the same
Best
thing
in their
when you
own
give
community.
charitable,
But
right?
that same example can be can be used here. If you're if you give, let's take for instance 3 Square. There's amazing food bank here. They do some really great work. I can go ahead and say I'm going to buy $20 worth of groceries at Albertsons, Smith's, name it, one of those places, right? Or now I can get a bag with some decent stuff, a few things here and there, because $20 doesn't go up,
Right.
doesn't go far. Or I can give the money to the food bank, and they can add those $20 to the other donations, and they buy bulk. So the can of beans I bought for $1.39, they're gonna get it for 35 cents.
That's right.
See, so my dollar would have gone a long way had I been strategic, just like Norma said.
Yeah.
She was overseas, I'm here locally. If I had just thought about the impact the nonprofit has, because they can buy bulk, I was buying at a grocery store.
Gotcha.
Right.
So-
And it's also to trust, right? If you're a donor, right, you may have your passion project, but maybe that's not really the solution that they need, right? And to trust a nonprofit that they've been doing this for a while, that they're talking, right, to the people that need, also to trust in the people that are receiving, right, the funding, the support, right, to know that they know best what they need. And so I think that sometimes happens in philanthropy. We don't trust the nonprofit, right? Let them be the good stewards, right? They know what their clients, their customer needs, right? I don't go around. I mean, sure, maybe I can send a message board to, Apple, but I trust that they have all the engineers to develop the best products. The same thing with nonprofits. We have to trust, and that's why stringless, outright gifts are so significant to a nonprofit, because when we do have a crisis and we're trying to reach more and do more public good and services, we'll know how to innovate and stretch those dollars, and we need those dollars to be flexible. I didn't know that I was going to need so many scrubs as I need it now, right? For frontline workers. I couldn't have predicted the pandemic, but that's what those unrestricted dollars allow me to do. And also those that give, whether it's a funding partner or an individual donor, they trust that I know what's needed, right? Because I'm working directly on the ground with those who need the support.
If there's young adults that are interested in getting in the line of work that you two are doing, what would you suggest for them to do, and what would you suggest for them to avoid doing?
I would say,
Don't do drugs.
that's one of them.
Don't show up for the volunteer event with your heroin.
No, I think volunteer. Really find the cause, right? It's great to do good, but my job comes with a lot of strategy and a lot of sometimes no's, right? Unfortunately, you have to have thick skin. You have to have a business head. You have to understand what a balance sheet looks like, how to build a budget. It's not just do good, because if you just want to do good, then go volunteer. But if you want to do the work that Norma and I do, then you need to be educated. You need to understand how to build a strategy, how to build a budget, how to build relationships, how to maintain, how to evaluate programs, how to turn around. I've had organizations that ask me what I want them to do. Well, you really can't ask me what you want me to do. I mean, what do you do, right? Because I can say you can build a ship to go to the moon and take Jeff Bezos and everybody else, or you can feed the homeless, which is what you were designed to do, right?
Yeah.
You have to be able to do all those things, be diplomatic, understand how volunteering works, understand in that paying for overhead for a nonprofit doesn't mean that you're paying luxury, because all you want to do is direct client services, but Norma needs to get paid.
Right.
She
and I
has
have to
to
have
support.
the best people, right?
Yeah.
If we're going to workforce development, if I'm going to change that narrative, I have to have people who understand it, right? And who know how to deploy the programming. You have to have a good ED, and I'm not saying that, it's any ED, right? Or someone who also looks at nonprofits and says, where can I make a best impact? You have to have a really good sense of knowledge. You have to have a business plan. You have to forecast, you have to budget, you have to build programs, you have to build partnerships. You need the business acumen. Nonprofit, once again, remove that mindset of poverty. It's just a bunch of good people with good hearts. Absolutely. The kindest, nicest, most beautiful people I've met work in nonprofit. But also, I'm going to say, right, the biggest mistakes that I have seen have come from nonprofits. And me being in the nonprofit sector, sometimes I've had to swim against, the current.
Because people don't see them as
change.
nonprofit,
Right.
as businesses. That's the biggest mistake people
Yeah.
make. People on boards, too.
There isn't a strategy. You have no idea. I've been, in meetings with high level executives where they approved a budget for a program, and then I ask them for the rationale, and they cannot give me the rationale. And it drives me insane. And I'm in the nonprofit. I'm trying to raise money for those programs, but I have to understand the rationale. And also, they need to be driven from the grounds up. That's also another thing. There are nonprofits out there that are bloated, not in their overhead, in the fact that there's a disconnect, right, from those that they're providing the programs and services from, right? So you have to have boots on the ground. I would say that that's another thing to look at a nonprofit. They must have boots on the ground.
We're about a half an hour till the end, and this is where I usually start the final questions. So this
Final questions.
Dun, dun, dun.
it's going to be about 5 questions, and then each of you answer each one, and then
What is your favorite taco shop in Las Vegas?
no?
Pinches
have any.
tacos.
Beaches.
First question: What?
He wrote the question, just for the record.
Is this like a fire quick round?
Yeah,
I'm
it's like
nervous.
I'm concerned now that
we're like about to hit something.
What?
No pressure.
I
It's
added
fine.
a question, and I didn't realize I forgot I added it. First question: What great daily habits do you have?
I make sure I make time for a workout.
Oh, excellent. Yeah.
It helps me release stress, but that's really important. The pandemic, for some of us that were lucky enough to continue to have work, created this very unbalanced life, right? Because I work from home.
Yeah.
So when this first hit, their need was so big in trying to help our employees through the employee emergency grant that my team and myself were working 7 days a week, 10, 12 hour days. And you get to the point which I talk to my friend all the time, you have to find a balanced life. You can have a passion for what you do, because I absolutely love. I am one of the few people that gets up in the morning and says that my job is an addiction to be able to work and make an impact. And people may not always agree with me. I may not be liked by everyone, but I can honestly get up in the morning, look at myself in the mirror, and go to bed at night and look at myself in the mirror and say, okay, I've accomplished something good. Someone's life will be impacted whether I know them directly or not. But because I was always connected, I started to get burned out.
Yeah.
And even when you love your job, if you don't have healthy balances between family, work, and yourself, and as a woman, we talk about it all the time, women have a hard time finding self-care time, because then there's the obligation of someone calling you and telling you, what's for dinner? I don't know what for dinner. Seriously.
Whatever you want to cook.
Yeah, whatever you want to bring, cook, whatever. So my daily habit is that I need to make time for a quick workout, whether it's a walk with the dogs or just something.
Yeah. It's a good one.
So I'm on that learning curve. I'm not quite there. Just gonna
I just work nonstop.
I feel all eyes on me. Yeah. So, but what I'm learning is definitely to cultivate no. So I think a lot of us struggle with no, right?
I'm going to give you my button.
But definitely being a leader, one of the things that I learned that what makes me a strong leader is when I'm able to tackle, right, the big goals. So I might not get through everything on my list, because my list, if I stop making lists, that's another thing. And my list is huge, and I may not tackle all, and then I overextend myself and I'm not effective. So I'm learning not only, well, I have been saying no so that I can prioritize and say today, these are the 3 main priorities that I am going to hit. And that's also not having to answer all of my emails. And sometimes, you want to get back to people, but I also don't want to apologize all the time for it or feel guilty, because I think I'm being an effective leader by prioritizing. Now, I may prioritize something today. It doesn't mean that I discard the priority of it for tomorrow. So I think that's also what we constantly need to do as leaders, is to, we're not only thinking of what we're trying to achieve long term, but also to check, right? Because we may have to adjust. You have to be able to pivot and adjust. And so maybe that priority will have to shift. And I'm just learning to not feel guilty and making a habit out of not feeling guilty about the things that I have to prioritize. That means that I have to say no to some things.
I think the no thing is big. As a software engineer, when I have upper management saying, hey, we want to add this module, and I think about it, I'm like, okay, that's a 3-week module for someone to program. We have a team of 4 people. Those 4 people are dedicated to something else. I find my strategy is to tell the upper management, like, okay, if you want this, here's this other list that we have. Which one do you want to cross off?
Correct.
And I think that's where upper management hates me sometimes, but I make it very clear. You want this, there has to be some type of compromise. You don't just get to say you want this all the time. That's where I find the best thing is to be transparent and give them a reason why.
Yes. You have to tell people where the priorities are. I just had someone ask me in HR, how's my team doing? How are they doing burnout? And I said, my team is doing fine, because I strongly believe in balance. Nothing we do, no one dies on my watch, right? It can wait until tomorrow. We prioritize. We work really hard. We say, no, sometimes we can't do this right now. We are going to have to wait. We don't have the resources. And if someone pushes, the same thing you said. Well, here's the list of things, of priorities we need to do. Which one do you want us to focus on? But the health and well-being of my group, my team as a leader, is the most important thing I have. Those people look to me to make sure I make the right decisions for their everyday life, right? And that is my big responsibility. So I have mastered the no, so I'll pass on my no button. I got no problem with that.
I'm saying the no, it's the guilt that comes with it sometimes. That's every day that I try to cultivate. And it's about being effective, because I am more building like a G.I. Jane. To me, it's that. It's if ultimately that's a conversation I have to have with myself, because I can be a bleeding heart, right? It's say, okay, where can you be the most effective? And so you're not effective, right? If you're also not only you're executing, right? You're executing on what you can execute on this big priority. So you have to say no to other things, but then also you won't be very effective if then you're carrying the weight of that no, right? Or feeling guilty or apologizing because you had to say no. You cannot apologize for effective leadership, right? Sometimes we have to make hard decisions. So you
can't apologize for being a human, and that's the big thing. I think people say true. People see if you're an executive, all of a sudden you're not human. You don't have a family life. You can't hurt. No, it's one and the same. If today something happens to you that hurts you, you cannot be an effective leader today. You may not be able to make decisions. You're gonna have to rely on someone else to support you, right? That's the strength of a team. You're not alone. Just because you are the leader, you are the title, you are this, doesn't mean that you're alone. And you have to acknowledge that work is important, but so is your family life. So is the life around you. The balance is in having everything and managing it correctly. Sometimes certain things take a bigger priority, right? So if you have an ill parent, you might have to spend some more time with the family than you would otherwise. Or sometimes you have big projects. If you're going
a puppy that you got out of guilt.
I told her not to get one. I have 2. I was gonna let them borrow one. But I think the leadership is about making sure that you understand your balance and you understand that the person, it's a whole person you get when you work with someone. It's not the little pieces of it. It's not just the worker, because I need to care about the person so that person can become a good worker. And we miss when we just say, well, you're just the worker. No, you're not ever the worker, because it's important to find the balance, not a bleeding heart. She is a bleeding heart.
Yeah.
And my biggest thing for her is find the balance, because her heart's so big that she wants to do it all together, all at once, and then she's written with guilt. I wrote a book on guilt, so just so you know.
So I learned. But let me tell you also, life and loss teaches you. So I think my biggest educator, because you can preach it and talk it, and I'll say it to other women, and she laughs at me because every time I'm saying, no, I'm striking a new balance. I'm striking a new balance.
And I look at Tony and he's like,
what balance? Tony's like, there's no balance. Just talk to my kid. My kid is like, they both told me, so I was feeling very proud. So I've never been an animal owner. So now that I have the puppy, I'm super excited because the puppy loves me the most, gets the most excited when I come home. And then both Tony and my child have told me the only reason the puppy gets so excited is because you're a novelty. You really show up. So it's like, ouch. So yeah, that was a reminder. Okay, definitely
balance.
Clearly I'm out of balance. But I think loss. I lost my dad, and I think that was a huge reminder, right? And I think that loss was so deeply painful because it came with a lot of regret and guilt. And so I definitely don't want to live with regret and guilt, but I think there's certain things you don't get to do a do-over. You just don't have a do-over. And so in this life, you're right, we don't get a do-over. So striking that balance and then accepting all of our humanity, and sometimes we're not going to get it right, but I think to live your life. And listen, when I look at the mission of what we do for our organization, we don't say we're just helping women succeed in work, right? Because that's not, we're looking at her whole holistically, right? The whole woman. We say in work and life. And so I got to live my mission too. It's it's me in work and life.
I tell young people that I love my job, but I work to live. I want to enjoy the people around me. I want to enjoy great friends. I want to enjoy family. I want to enjoy my puppies. I want to enjoy travel, right? That doesn't make it my job second. It's just that I don't live to work. Because the people that live to work sometimes miss the big component of what life is really about, right? And the other best thing that someone told me is life is not a dress rehearsal. You only get it once. So what you do with it, you do it now. So you live by that, and you work really hard to find that balance, because today's here, but tomorrow's not.
What do you think or know of cryptocurrency?
I am going to pass that to my friend over here.
Yes.
You can say you don't know.
What
do you think of it?
No, actually, what have you heard? Actually, that might be a good question.
Yeah.
Meaning,
It's more interesting to hear.
I'm gonna sound like an idiot. So
No.
that's exactly. A lot of people don't know enough about it.
I don't know enough about it. I know it's very expensive. It's another form of investment. I'm not sure that, based on the little I know that I'm a proponent, I think I'm big on sustainability. And even though this is digital, it's a digital coin. That's what it is, right? The amount of energy that it takes to maintain this digital coin in our world.
See, you know some stuff.
But not enough to really talk about investment and all that other stuff. I don't know that. I don't think we need to add more pollutants. More,
you're bringing up a great point. It takes a lot of processing power to transact and maintain something like Bitcoin.
Correct.
That's changing. There are new ways to run cryptocurrency where it won't take as many computers in the future. So that's very soon it will take a lot less.
So that's good. I'm concerned. I was more concerned on the sustainability and what it does to our planet. I think we've talked about community, right?
Yeah.
But we really haven't talked about
environment and environmental justice, right? Because it mostly affects communities of color and poverty.
Yeah, the big impact humans have in this world, and the fact that we are not accountable for it. Right? Yeah. We throw a piece of garbage on the ground and we just walk away. No. This actually kills animals. If we didn't have people conservationists taking care of our animals, your kids, because I already have mine, will not
you guys
see half the species that we have today, right? Humankind tends to be destructive. Right? Yeah. And so we're not necessarily sometimes we're thinking, oh, it's digital, so we don't see it, therefore it's good for the environment. No, it is actually not good for the environment, and that's why Elon Musk pulled out, right? He made this big statement that he was going to be and then one of the reasons he gave is, well, it's not really sustainable. I'm sure he gave others. I skipped that part of the conversation. So I'm not a big proponent. If it changes, maybe I won't have a choice. Maybe that will be the way I transaction moving forward.
What you're looking for is it's called proof of stake. So right now it's proof of work. So when it changes, it'll take a lot less resources.
99% less.
Yeah.
I'll take your word for it.
To run the Also, you said you started with it's expensive. It's actually not expensive.
Really?
Yeah, you don't have to buy a whole coin. You can buy $10 worth or $100 worth. Yeah. So it doesn't have to be expensive.
You know how Norma talked about women in finance? So we belong to a group of Latino women, professional women
group,
that a friend of ours created 3 years ago. And one of the things, hey, listen, I balance millions of dollars out of a budget. But one of the things we struggle with sometimes is understanding that, right? And that's another thing that women need to be better at, understanding the finance. We have great women in finance. We just have to be able to explain it to the rest of us. So.
Or I think I would say even sometimes sort of that immigrant story, right? Your parents tell you, your mom tells you, save, and you just think of saving, but you're not thinking of dividends. And I think, yes, absolutely, women do not see themselves or think of themselves enough as investors. And we have to, because that's really, really a game changer. And I want that for our women, right? So we teach them we try to have basic financial literacy programs through our partnerships, and those in the finance sector. But I think it has to go way deeper than that. I think it's even in our education, right? We're not teaching kids really. I tell Alejandro all the time, Alejandro, do you want $1, right? And what are you going to do with that dollar? You spend it, you end up with zero. Or you want to put that dollar in your pocket. Now you have $1 in your pocket. Or do you want to turn that dollar into $2, right? I mean, most respond, I want to turn it into $2. So I came in late into investment. I wish I would have learned it in school. And, we talk about it. I can do a P&L and I can look at a budget, but why can I invest, And so it's ridiculous, right? I can balance a checkbook, but so I always prided myself, I guess, being traditional, coming from a hardworking immigrant family that, I have no debt. I didn't incur any debt.
That's great.
I was good that way, but, I really I wasn't in a position really, aside from what you get in a traditional 401k, or if you work in the nonprofit sector, a 401(b). I wasn't making my money work for me. I wasn't paying myself. I wasn't growing. So I'm very excited about cryptocurrency. I was very excited early on, but then I also, like most things, right? We develop a little bit of imposter syndrome. So I didn't jump in early. So Tony invested in early. And this is where I know the psychology of investing in women, or why we don't really do it as much. But now I'm happy to say that I've gained more in percentage in my investments than Tony.
I need to be talking to Norma now.
But you know what? I have less invested. So he'll take more. I'm probably a little bit more risk adverse. But when I bet in I don't bet. I know, right? It's just like everything, right? Investing is not a scary thing in products and goods and services, right? So I look at those organizations that I believe in, how they're run. I look at their leadership, I look at the reports. I mean, all that you would normally do, right? And that's what I invest in. And cryptocurrency, why I'm excited about it is how we can democratize things, right? Being in the public sector, in the social good sector, I'm excited to see what's going to happen. What is cryptocurrency going to mean for charity? What's it going to mean for the banking system that hasn't been necessarily so good? What is it going to mean for healthcare as well? We haven't thought about it that way. We've looked at in times of crisis what the cell phone has done to communities in poverty. I'm excited to see what crypto is going to do. I believe in it. I think that with all things that are new, there's hesitation, there's not enough knowledge, there's fear that comes out of it, but also products, just like any product, right? Over time it develops, right? You find a different way to produce it. And I believe that I believe that also there are indicators too that we are finding a cheaper, more sustainable way to develop digital currency. And so I believe in it. Yeah, I'm excited about it.
Awesome.
One knew what she was talking about.
Next question. What's the biggest problem for humans? What should they do to fix it?
Too much shame.
Themselves. Sometimes we can't get ourselves out of our own way.
Too many people?
No, I just think sometimes we don't, because we don't like to see the ugly in us, we push it towards others. So I think the human race is really complex, right? There's this huge level of human kindness because the world revolves around human kindness, but we always focus on the negative. right? So you turn the TV, you watch the news, and
That's what makes
90%,
the paper, right?
yeah,
The horrible
90% of
stories.
the stuff is all the horror stories, right? But there's not even a 1% of the stories that talks about the human kindness that happens, the care that people do for each other. Yeah, I think we're just sometimes our own worst enemy, just because we also somehow prefer to see all that negativity, because otherwise the media will have to change, right? Than the positive. So
Yeah, I think I agree with you, but I would say poverty, right? We talked about that earlier, and definitely shame and many things that are rooted in that. But let's say even if it's a disability, right? Like we talked about the little boy, or even if it's trauma of violence, but if you don't have the right resources to seek out the health care, if you don't have, so I think it's income inequality, right? Those inequalities, the injustice that comes with poverty, the trauma, the shame that comes with poverty, all that. So I would say poverty is one thing that I would like to tackle, right? There's the childhood mortality rate that's related to poverty, right? Racism related to poverty, right? Creating systems of inequality. So
she wants to change the world. See,
Yeah.
she's a much better person than I am.
I think you're both
I should
pretty
get out of my
excellent
own
people,
way
yeah.
too. I think I get in my way, right? Let the guilt go. Get out of my way.
Clearly, we're sitting with two of the best people in the world. So
You're right.
we're good.
Yeah.
Next question's a little bit more fun. What's your favorite food?
Oh man, that's a hard one. You go.
Okay, so I am half Argentinian, half Ecuadorian. My Argentinian side is Italian, so I love Italian food. Okay, now, however,
You said
Italian, half Argentinian, half Ecuadorian. My dad's family is Italian descent,
Oh, okay.
so
Argentinians
Argentina.
in Argentina.
yeah. So I love a good pasta. Okay, my dad is an amazing barbecuer. So if you know anything about Argentinians, they are good with their meat.
Parrilla.
Oh, it's the best.
You can be a vegetarian if you grew up in Argentina.
Oh no, I'll be
Argentina,
disowned.
forget it,
Let's
it's
say
over.
that at some point my brother decided to date a vegetarian.
Yeah.
And that did not last in my family. Needless to say, I love my sister-in-law now. She's awesome.
Wait, was the food too delicious for him to resist, or the family
It's
pressured
cultural
him
too.
back?
Cultural.
Okay,
Yeah, it's just
hard.
you know.
Yeah.
The salad is an addition too, but the main dish is always something red. In Ecuador, I love the soups.
Yeah.
El bolón. Yeah, that's things that are enough. So I have a combination of many things I like.
Well, so Ecuador and Argentina are cuisines that we're not familiar with, because I'd say in Vegas there's no Ecuador restaurant, right?
No.
Is there-
Ecuadorian restaurant?
Yeah.
No, not really.
Argentinian, there is one on Spring Mountain. There's a couple of them that are good. One on Flamingo and one on Spring Mountain.
Okay.
But their cuisines are not anywhere near.
So I've known you for 3 years and you've never taken me to an Argentinian
Really?
restaurant. I'm very
But-
upset.
Well, for the purpose of full disclosure, I usually don't eat meats or barbecue unless my dad's cooking it. So
that makes sense. It's the same thing with
I
us
am
with
very
Thai food.
particular about the type of meat cut. So if I go to a restaurant, you'll never see me order the filet mignon or anything that looks like a red piece of meat.
Wait, why are filet mignons bad?
No, it isn't. It's just the way I like it, the way my dad cooks it, right? So you
Okay.
tend to be really particular about how it tastes and how it's cooked and all that good stuff. My mom makes a mean chimichurri, the best chimichurri on the planet. So you put that over a steak. So you guys are
Yummy.
both invited, because I don't know if you know this, but Tony is a heck of a closet karaoke guy. So
Oh,
he has to come out
he
of the
was
closet.
holding out on us.
My dad is so impressed he wants to come bring him over for dinner. So
Nice.
what's your favorite meal?
I mean, that's the worst question. So I love food. I love all foods, everything. There's few things I'll say no to. So that's just the worst question that you can ask me. I love it all. But I guess if I would have to choose, it's probably just because culture,
Arroz con
right?
huevo.
Ties. Yeah, arroz con huevo frito. I guess it would be Ecuadorian food. But then because I grew up in New York with lots of Caribbeans, and I consider myself partly Dominican too. I love Dominican. Those, the foods that tend to be comfort food for you. And now Thai has, obviously with Tony's mom, it's the same way that you feel about your dad. Like, I really don't want to go to a Thai. I used to go to Thai restaurants and used to think I used to have great Thai meals until I
Yeah.
met Tony and his mom so listen, my favorite food is wherever I'm traveling, that country's food. I just love to eat. I love to experience culture. I love to experience food. I'll even dive into things that I normally think I won't like. But when someone serves you a plate of love, you just better eat it up. So,
Do you like chicken feet?
I am not a fan of chicken feet, but I've eaten it before.
Yeah.
Certainly when my grandmother would make me soup,
Yeah.
included
I was
the
gonna say
chicken
they
feet.
included
I
the
was
chicken
like,
feet,
yeah,
yeah.
they did. I was like, yum, 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 yum. You know, so I'll eat it. There are things that I've surprised myself that I've actually eaten that I like that I normally thought like. I feel horrible saying this. Okay, so we had a stint. Like I said, I grew up in New York. Not a lot of pets or animals, but we had a couple of traumatic experiences
I don't know
with
where this
some
is
pets.
going, but it sounds like you ate
So
some pets.
my sister, her fiance gave her a pet rabbit, and we had Charlie for a little bit. He was adorable, but we really couldn't manage the pet. We were a very crazy family. So Charlie became, let's just say, almost like a barking dog. So my sister's fiance took Charlie back. Then my first trip to Paris, obviously I want to eat my way because I'm a foodie through Paris.
Yeah.
And I really struggled because I did have, of course, rabbit. And it was delightful and delicious. And I realized that I love rabbit, but all I could think of
I
was
was trying
Charlie.
to see where she was going with this. I was just, there's a new.
So I didn't eat Charlie, but it felt like I was eating Charlie. There was a lot of guilt involved in eating that delicious rabbit.
the vegetarians that follow this podcast are really not going to appreciate any of us.
No, and that's another thing I did. I was a vegetarian for a year for humanitarian reasons, right? Just because I saw and visited slaughterhouses and I did it for humanitarian reasons and also just for the environment, right? It's not sustainable, right? But culturally, I was like, who am I kidding myself? My father would seduce me with steaks, and the food. And then also the way we make it in Latin America. And I just love food, right? I cannot travel to a culture and say, I'm not saying that all cultures obviously consume animal products, and then say, no, I can't eat that, right? It goes against my ethics or my morals, or I want a sustainable world. I do, but I have limited my meat intake. That's what I try to do. Like at least do meatless Mondays.
What if they could grow rabbit meat in a brick in a lab?
I'll be all about it. I've seen
No.
it. Actually, no, they can do. They take
No.
insects.
I don't want anything that grows that's not organic, for God's sakes.
But it is
just-
organic. You
no,
can
no, no,
have
no, no. In
a
a brick?
sustainable.
There's no
Well, not a
pesticides?
brick,
No.
What I meant is more what they're doing with cells, right? How
Yeah,
they're
exactly.
growing meat.
I'm all about technology and growing and all that
But that
stuff.
can be
not genetically
a
modified.
farm-fed, grass-fed, not genetically modified, right? It could be an
Or it's in a
animal,
brick.
right?
He said brick.
No, well, I think it's kids. But let's say they do, because I was watching, who do you like? And he's very much about sustainability, Bill Nye. And he had this one scientist, and he was
Bill Nye,
talking. I
science
love Bill
guy.
Nye.
Yeah.
I'm a huge Bill Nye. I'm such a nerd fan. And so I don't understand it all because it went over my head. I'm not too smart, that way. But it was really taking this, and you can take a farm, ethically raised animal, right?
Yeah.
Sustainable. You're not feeding all the genetic modified corn or any of that stuff. But then also it's ethical because you're not slaughtering that animal. You can take some of the cells, and then they started trying to see if they can replicate the meats, and it can just be as yummy and tasty because you're taking that DNA from that animal.
Let her taste it first. Because
I told you I love food.
I went
I'll
to
be
a
like,
place that
yeah,
they called
feed me.
vegan
But listen.
tacos, and no offense, they were the worst things I've had ever. Since you asked what was my favorite taco restaurant, it's definitely, I'm not going to go to a vegan taco.
But I've had vegan tacos. That's what I'm telling you. I'm a foodie. I love it all. I get as excited about vegetables as I can about steak.
Okay, so
I love.
Maria Jose is open to the idea, but we'll have to trick her into it.
Yeah, we're gonna have to trick
Just
her.
don't tell
And
me
her
what's
father
in
has
it.
to barbecue it.
Yeah, my dad has to barbecue it, so I'm not having it.
Final question. Name 2 friends that should do this conversation. Call them out.
Uh-huh.
2 friends that should do this conversation with this subject.
be in
Yeah,
this
who would you
podcast.
recommend to come on to the...
But
Who would you like
it
to see?
It doesn't have to be this subject, just in the podcast, right?
Oh, anything. Yeah.
Oh,
Who would you love to see have this conversation with Liem?
Erika Aviles.
I was thinking Erica too. Yeah.
Erika Aviles.
I think she should
She's
be there.
a-
So she's the founder of this women's group that we belong to. That's so amazing, and she is really someone. What is hers? I always get it screwed. I'm telling you, I can't say sayings, but we lift as we. She says it.
Erica.
So we lift as we
Aviles.
grow.
We're coming
We
after you.
lift. So basically, when you say female empowerment, she really means it, and she is someone that I being a cynical New Yorker, when I moved here and when I joined the group, she'll literally text you and check you and say, what do you need? Yeah. And that's what this group is all about. And I was like, oh my God, what do they mean? Are they serious? Or are they serial killers? And she really
we are
means
not.
it when she's checking in on you. And it's amazing. And her generosity of heart, of mind, of whatever, if she can connect you with someone, she will. And it's not transactional. She's not looking for anything in return. And she really believes in just the power of showing up for each other.
She's created this group of women that started with a lunch, and now it's over 300 women. Latino women.
It's a buffet.
And it's an amazing experience of women that support each other. Because if you know anything about women, sometimes we're very competitive with each other. So
when you're the minority, right? We're pinned against each other.
This group has become this great way to connect, and it's resources you have. If someone needs something, you can reach out. She's done such an amazing job, and I am just blessed to call her a friend, just like I call Norma. So.
That's where Maria Jose and I met. So trust me, there's been no nepotism here as far as, philanthropy, a corporation to a funder. We knew each other and it's from this women's group. And it's also sharing, but it's also having the hard conversations. When I've been turned down for a grant, right? It's happened. And sometimes you just don't hit the mark, or understanding that funder has other priorities, and there is an alignment, and you have to know that. You have to do your research and do your work. So, but this Women's Professional Network, I think, just any network, when you talk about young talent wanting to break into philanthropy or into any industry, I would say, join a network, become a part of something with a group. We need each other. We're social beings. And I think the best networks are where you can address life issues as professional issues. I can get a recommendation on, crap that I don't know anything about because I suck in healthcare. Like, oh my God, I need to get my hair done so I don't end up with a tree like I did when I was a kid, right? A triangle of a hair. Like, who do I go to? Because I have no expertise in that, or, professional, right? I need business advice. I need a sounding board. Mm-hmm. Or when we talk about what do we need, maybe we need more financial investment, right? Lessons for the group. And so it's about that. And I think that's really unique. It's organic and it's authentic and it's real and it's amazing. So talk to Erica Aviles.
Yeah, she has a consulting firm that she started from scratch. So she's definitely someone that it's doing really well. I think the world of this person I'm about to mention, if you ever want to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, there's this young woman who I had the pleasure of working with. She doesn't work for MGM anymore. She works for Liberty Mutual.
Yes, Magali.
Her name is Magali Munoz Mejorado, raised and born here in Las Vegas. No, not born. She's an immigrant. She's a first generation immigrant. One of the smartest people I've had the pleasure of working with. She is in touch and in tune with the diversity world. And that's what she does for Liberty Mutual, but she means it.
Yeah.
And so
she lives it.
Yeah, she does. And again, smarter than I am, kinder, with a great voice.
That's what I was going to say. So you must have her sing. It's amazing. Please, anything, just make request.
Awesome. All right, I think that makes this the end. Unless there's any. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. You need to plug yourself. Do you think?
And you must have Tony Murphy in this podcast.
Yes, Tony.
Talk about the film world.
Oh.
Plug yourself. How should people either get in touch with you if they want to get involved?
Follow your TikTok.
Okay, this does not go in there. I usually can't plug myself because that means people will call me and ask me for funding.
Okay, gotcha.
So, all I could tell you is that if you want to connect with me and have a conversation about philanthropy, connect with me on LinkedIn. My name is Maria Jose Gatti, and I work for MGM Resorts. Happy to have a conversation.
LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. Excellent.
And I would say go to Dress for Success. Go to our website. So it's it's very lengthy. Spell it all out. Dress for Success, SouthernNevada.org. So go to Dress for Success.
You can't be DFSNSN?
So that's my email, but not the website.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's lengthy, but just look us up, follow us on social, just key Dress for Success Southern Nevada, and look us up and learn about us, get involved, activate in so many ways. You can activate as a volunteer, as a career coach. You can do a sisterhood check-in, just an hour or less, or 15 minutes, you know. You can help with our donation intake processing. You can give, like I said, of your time as a volunteer. You can donate an item, donating clothing that can serve a woman. We need more summer attire. Believe it or not, people donate off-season items. We don't have the space for it, ladies. No winter clothes in the midst of a heat wave. It's not going to help a woman go to an interview.
You want my giant fur coats?
No fur coats, okay? We need flat shoes, ballerina shoes, those kind of working. A lot of women are working from home. Also, non-traditional trade industries, non-skid shoes are big. So you can make an in-kind donation, something that you can recycle and that woman can use. Clean, please, ladies. It has to be clean, ready to wear summer attire.
Pressed.
Yes, well, a little pressed, yeah. And you can donate. No gift is too small, honest to God. Please, give, support the charities and the causes that you care about. There's so much work that needs to be done. Our community needs us.
Awesome. Maria, Jose, Norma, it was a super pleasure. Thank you for spending 3 hours with us.
Thank you for having us.
Excellent.